Ian, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I just sent out the 1AC. I'll let you know when we're ready to get going.
First thing I asked Turner for flow paper, he's like, oh yeah, for sure, I'll go right after this. Someone has to use these, so. I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay. Yeah, no, take your time. And Mickey, are you good?
Yep.
Okay. Emory, you all good? Good is good. And I assume Ian, you're good. Okay, awesome. Start now.
Advantage 1 is warships. Confusion over the legal status of autonomous vessels as warships meet international law precipitates conflict. U.S. must clarify their position to ensure safe, predictable naval operation. Mackenzie 20 VMVs qualified ships that carry questions warship access to military rights. Association warship have current be commanded the persons warship more flexible interpretation, evolutionary interpretation of treaty should be part outside treaty. There's insufficient practice and opinion. Jurors provided basic rights of VMV rights have not been clarified. This creates a real risk. Our conflict states have different views about categorization. Clarify practice. UMVs can fit within existing regulations. The best way to ensure safe and predictable operation of the ocean. The best way to reach future conflict for the U.S. make their view of the legal position clear. Ambiguous legal status inhibits naval operation of uncrewed vessels, specifically lack of warship status eliminates sovereign immunity, subjecting shift to unpredictable seas. Are Robinson 23 navies the U.S. seas are proliferating and being employed recent incidents highlight ambiguous legal environment. Average explain the great on the fifth leaders of the forefront pressure to build testimony intensity must try to use seizure interference by grace and action legal wrangling concerning employment. There was all be counter revolution seizures by China and retrogrades adversaries are claiming questionable justification to ascertain seaworthiness, typically rapidly integrate artificial intelligence time operation employment depending on whether Navy leaders can manage risk while protecting USC. Its goal is in jeopardy unless the Navy can practice unsettled as a matter of international law as whether USC can sovereign immediately warships illegal gray area. This leaves the door open for coastal nation. They argue they should have a right to seize and inspect on crude vessels that risk catastrophic miscalculation with China. Carlick 19 autonomous craft made for attempting to target increased miscalculation in the high sea uncrewed systems or threshold for military action. Seriously, implication of ultra regions not least as CS where US has been confronted by China and Russia autonomous systems proliferate committee yourself boldness strike these platforms experiencing lower repercussions. Chinese and Russian Navy showing themselves more than ever. The Chinese military without plentiful opportunities to interact with American systems only a matter of time before vessels deployed. Chinese Navy have found uncrewed vessels too. Tenorize impacts on the statute of Washington retorted permissive certificate and incident could trigger escalation and spark the next conflict. Nuclear war. How much 17 U.S. trying to work and escalate nuclear level conventional force unpredictable. The U.S. is trying to make miscalculate so be down in anticipated nuclear catastrophe. The U.S. and trying to overcome which exacerbates risk the because of the commingling of conventional and nuclear weapons, the military might attack China's weapons and avert use or release a partially do a decision. That's why China might fear would to lose its nuclear deterrent. Autonomous vessels by global deterrence of illicit maritime drug activity. Coyo 21. And the counter drug message is predicated upon MDA. The great spirit of MDA is tyranny, distant which trains enforcement and coastal illicit activity. Autonomous targets exceptionally important for MDA. According to marked autonomous warship inherent deterrent illicit activity. The great value personal activity is to deter traditional warship present can be truncated or terminated. Autonomous vessels so operational gap have great endurance yield the more persistent parts of vessels offer enhanced detection and monitoring sensors is valuable in locating and trafficking drug trafficking surveillance intelligence and reconnaissance make it difficult to avoid law enforcement self this powerful interdiction tool vessels offer best cost to be realized and reduce operating costs so sustainability is particularly true in counter drug. Maritime drug trafficking subsidizes and facilitates terrorism, and WMD prolific enhancing counter drug technology is key to deter. Ramirez 16. Vessels drug terrorists continue to use Marco sub vessels operation throughout South Central America. Drug trafficking been linked with terrorism. Al Qaeda Taliban has bullets and involved in drug activity networks facilitate movement of weapons of mass destruction as well as high value targets of the West. Criminal operation could lead to great damage to submarines that carry weapons of mass destruction, biological warfare, and chemical weapons. Organizations use illicit marketplace to fund activities deployed substance vessels of mass destruction. A terrorist group could operate with Al Qaeda or has fully equipped narco cells with a technical feature launch destructive attacks and U.S. targeted advanced and narco subtech for sending challenges law enforcement counteract innovative tech law enforcement must invest in upgrading their own. Nuclear terrorism is plausible and cause extinction. Hates 18. Nuclear terrorism may retain over nuclear or at least as Emory failure or trip accidental detonation miscalculation for perception choices seek revenge as C3 system generates error combinations of above the nuclear terror could precipitate massive exchange of nukes between states actors except motivation and capacity example. Nuclear armed five non-state actors already conduct engineering projects requirements are certainly reasonable. Diverse set of motivated terror troops exist in apocalyptic entities. The conditions that generate such entity are likely to persist and expand. Advantage 2 is mines. Resolving uncrewed vessels ambiguous legal status is critical for deployment in demining operations. Coido 21, use of AVs is increasing OSHA activities. As use increases, apparent there will be repercussions for legal visa activities such as mine detection. The appeal is clear. Longer periods to expand areas of operation capacity of some reduced costs. Prove advantageous states discussion about size of MA visas, warships, and immunities, whether they enjoy any capacities are pertinent to deployment of MAVs. Autonomous vessels are key operational advantages for mine countermeasures are unprecedented. McCarl 23, UVs offer significant advantages. Military gains national rank. UMVs not have personnel offering versatility at presence in hostile waters without risking human life. UMVs try to access areas. There too has one of the most high mission appears to be mine countermeasure, mine detection, inherently risky operation military. For telling UMVs are well suited for the dangerous tests of mine countermeasure until UMVs to withstand hardship. The ocean environment provide greater and more persistent coverage, reactive process data, pressure, increasing operational tempo. UMVs have superior technology while forced to collect more intelligent, have better situation awareness, intelligence, right, overwhelming military events. UMVs are so cost effective. U.S. naval demining is critical to reopen Iran's potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Around the 20 U.S. and Iran depend on collision course that we could military confrontation virtually by Iran will make me mind the Strait of Hormuz for an allied forces from searching the Gulf mines represent the most sexy military challenges. They presented that we have started any vessel should Iran choose to place beyond the infantry to threaten commerce as assets to Iran. So sea mines in the Strait of Hormuz will fill to the U.S. Navy to clearly said lead mines. The Navy is ill prepared. No all causes. Mines are Iran's only strategic naval output blockage disrupts global oil supplies. Carbon 22. Iran's use of third mines to extract concession forcing coast to be easier than drinking a glass of water. The strategic waterway international dependent states. Iran's side series Iran has become more aggressive in the Persian Gulf. Iran's leadership wants the U.S. to recognize ability to disrupt global survival and the capabilities of lackluster regime depends on mines and their destructive impact to assert power over the Persian water. Strait of Hormuz closure causes U.S. Iran war goes nuclear off for Sabi and then test R-19. Tensions between the U.S. and Iran spiraling towards military confrontation. It's a real possibility the U.S. will use nuclear weapons, citing possibility nuclear strike, especially in the U.S. Iran should in which oil transit for Gulf would be impaired. Worker because Israel Iran's closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is a regional superpower, so missile tank aircraft drones conflict would not be capable of this. Increase the likelihood of nuclear war. The risk represents a president and clear danger of world peace. Oil shocks cause nuclear war, diversion, and regime instability. Cost in 16. Oil will risk aggression in the Middle East. States are double determination to assert aggressively any aggression in pursuit of oil will be met with U.S. Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia expert instability. The same is true regarding WMD. Part of the countries have nuclear capabilities. China is strategic competitor. Russia protect power with aggressive global nuclear ties with our opposition, radicalism, and Iran aggressive oil prosperity is perceived to be uncertain. Producing country export areas instability. Iran and GCC social impact under strain. Social compact under strain. Such acts put at risk governance while also stimulating radical forces preoccupied with the best of promises external aggression distracting populace. A dangerous combination could emerge. Mines in the Black Sea make Ukrainian grain exports impossible, even with port openings. All 22. As the UN broke a path to grain from the Ukraine and temporary global food crisis, mines along the Black Sea from practical nightmare. Black Sea is crucial for grain, even if Ukraine ports were to reopen. Danger from sea mines will limit shipments. Global grain production is forecast of all loss of Ukraine shipments will tighten supplies and drive up prices. Not safe for ships until the mines are shut. The situation not going to change. Mine hundred below the operated submarines unless that is achieved. There won't be sea orders. Falling Ukrainian grain exports cause global starvation. The impact is millions of premature deaths. 123. Ships carrying Ukrainian wheat and other grains packed up and during global food crisis contribute starvation, poverty, premature death. The U.S. and allies are struggling to reduce the crisis, supporting 345 million members of active food insecurity. We're dealing with massive food insecurity crisis, shortage causing intense pain across Africa, Asia, and the Americans, Ukraine, the bedbasket of the world. And reaches been immune. Food insecurity goes nuclear. COVID-19, danger of nuclear conflict, increasing the modernization. New state concrete set the highest risk humanity's ever shown with world research on there's nothing real at Syrian warhead, agriculture, fair among drivers, nuclear conflict, so possibly in South Asia and the Middle East is there all resource and food, nuclear firepower, multiplying pancake, regime deploy offensive weapons, equal invasion by refugees, fitting famine, insecurity, driving the precondition for use of nuclear weapons, thus solvency. The plan, the United States should vest artificially intelligent naval vessels with legal rights of belligerency. The Chief of Naval Operations has exclusive legal authority to designate autonomous vessels as warship. Proposal 22. U.S. Navy must reach responsibility regardless as UMVs under current action. UMVs are not warship. They mount unengaged in combat operations and armed conflict testing. The UMV must be a warship. The authority rests with Chief of Naval Operations. CNO is responsible for entering vessels in inventory, which can include UMVs or something approved. CNO from designating UMVs as warship as they determine crew and command requirements satisfied remotely belligerent rights are key. Otherwise, autonomous vessels are functionally useless. Mackenzie 20. Well, UMV ships under useless. It's not clear that they will be warships. Warships are only vessels exercise belligerent rights. The exclusive right to mount offensive attacks or cheat and technical value of UMV significantly limited if they are only ships and not warship. Warship is really defined as under the command as officer and crew satisfying these the threshold requirement for being a warship. U.S. clarifications note the legal status of uncrewed vessels prevents adversaries from exploiting regulatory uncertainty against the Navy. Sway 18. U.S. should take the lead with international framework on navigation recognition of UMS's vessels to benefit the military by providing a more certain operating environment, limiting ability of adversaries to exploit regulatory uncertainty against operation, incentivizing development of UMS technology. That clarification causes other states to follow suit. So in 18 to enhance safety and incentivize the development of UMS, the U.S. should work towards definitive recognition of UMS subject to regulatory scrutiny underway at the IMO. Strong U.S. position over UMS will persuade states the organization IMO to act. U.S. position on UMS rights and obligations in the water of the sea may cause other states to follow suit. Domestic legal clarification solved, but bans fail. NASU and Lex 20. Designation as a warship and nebulous associated implication for exercise of belligerent rights and hostile disagreement over legal character state between naval states demand copyrights to the case identification, how land subsidy employed without prejudice, security and conformity with rules in naval warfare states make up lands that they can determine the belligerent nexus of vessels. So that NASU and Let's card was marked at the belligerent nexus of vessels. And I'm good for cross-ex. Okay, cool. Okay, the next stop prep. So cross-ex.
Oh, sorry, you're telling the Zoom. I was like, yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying.
You just have to turn your volume off. So that,
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So both on mute volume.
yeah, Ian, can you hear us fine?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so my first question is like, what card do you think defines what an artificially intelligent naval vessel is as opposed to other naval vessels?
Our
Autonomous vessels operate with varying degrees of autonomy, but the one thing that defines them all is that they're piloted and guided by our.
Okay, sure. So I want to talk about solvency pretty closely. So the Pedroso evidence is like the US Navy needs to readjust its policy and basically just declare that UUVs can be a warship.
Yes.
Why do you need legal rights to do that?
Belligerent rights are what determine whether or not
That's the
ships
second
are
right,
warships.
the Mackenzie card, right? So the argument is just like you need to allow these ships to launch offensive attacks, right?
They need belligerent rights, yes.
Okay, why do you have to remove the human from the loop? Why does the ship have to be vested
You,
in right?
because the ship, like whether or not the ship has belligerent rights is what determines like if it has sovereign immunity, if it is able to act in war.
And
Like we
also-
post-plan, humans could still be in the loop.
Right, but
There's also no such thing as a belligerent individual, like a person.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we're beyond
no, I get that. I'm just
working
confused.
The
I'm
remote
just confused
operator.
on why the ship itself has to be vested rights and what advantage you have read that says that the ship must hold.
Both
Like how
advantages.
international law
Yeah,
works.
both advantages say that the ship
but
itself
fiat
needs the
can
belligerent
overcome
rights.
some of those
No, it
things.
can't. Like if you vest belligerent rights in the remote operator, they would have to themselves go into the South China Sea
Okay.
and take
But
mines
that's
out.
Okay.
a legal possibility. It's
Okay,
not-
and then, sorry, I just want to clarify. So you've tagged this card to be like the chief of naval operations has exclusive authority. Does that mean the chief of naval operations does the plan?
Plain text says United States,
But
but most
likely, yeah.
implementation.
Is like just this one person, does it?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, and that's what the US means? Like,
Yeah,
why does,
and
why
it's
does
an
it?
instrumentality of the government. We could read evidence
Okay,
saying that
gotcha.
if you read T.
Yeah, we will. The mining advantage, so you've read pieces of evidence, they're just like autonomous vessels, like existing are key, they need to have operational advantages. I don't understand the connection between that and belligerent rights, right? Like the
Yeah.
only part of the act that talks about belligerent rights is the solvency page.
No, that is not true. Both of the first two advantages have cards about this, and the first card on the mines advantage says that there are increasing questions about whether they have like rights of innocent passage, and if they're like actually
Okay.
have a status of warship.
Everyone
that would allow them
control
to
F
operate.
belligerent, it comes up twice in the first 20 card on page one, and then never again. on
Control F warships, which is in every card,
Okay,
and
right,
means the same
so why are
thing.
belligerent rights key? right?
Belligerent
Because
rights
that's
equals
gonna be your answer
warships.
to
You cannot be a
deficit.
warship without having belligerent rights. There's no difference between the two words. All of our cards say warships.
But then why, like, I disagree with that. Like, what card do you think says that it equates the two?
Yeah,
right? Because
our
supposedly,
Mackenzie
like-
card says the only vessels, it says warships are the only vessels that can exercise belligerent rights. The
But doesn't
second
that-
card on solvency says you're only a warship if you have belligerent rights.
Okay,
Like belligerent rights is code for warship.
okay, but you can be a warship without belligerent rights to
No,
solve your
that's-
advantages?
No.
Not possible.
Why do you need belligerent rights for the, like, US naval mining stuff?
Because our
Israel
Robinson
farmers?
evidence says that absent belligerent rights, absent the ability to conduct wartime operations.
Okay.
The
You're not a
base
warship.
operation of vehicles will be constrained by legal ambiguity, and adversaries will test that legal ambiguity through war.
The one in C was sent. It's 9, advantage 1, advantage 2. I have a timer.
But yeah.
Okay.
So what was the number?
9, advantage 1, advantage 2. Okay. Everyone good?
Actually, sorry.
Ian, you good?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay, thanks. Okay, you're good, Mickey?
Yeah.
Okay. First, politics, the United States should pass the permanent reform bill. Permanent reform passes now. Young 330 fall capital. She really will show the prospect of permanent reform. She plans to be shepherded the bill specific through the committee. This time it proved to be difficult. This appetite for permanent growing every day. We're already in the preliminary conversations. Republicans, Democrats, and the committee plans to hold a hearing today. Have to buy-in from everybody that we didn't have before them. Biden's BCST until in 23 compromise and permanent could reach Biden's. That's because Biden works skeptical Democrats to back permanent legislation. Permanent's on everyone's mind. We not have gotten a vote without the president's intervention. He is the president going to and continue to advocate for a person who drains it. Joe and 21 recognizing legal personhood of an intelligent being would be controversial. Legal to the implications. Extending legal person needs to be legislated by Congress. Congress for elections to recognize categories of legal person cluster and his force effective permitting solid distinction. Urban 23 US depends on China for minerals and critically important for military readiness. One where earth mine important dependent on its minerals critical by defense rely on China, Russia, Afghanistan, adversaries complex in the problem cars. The companies wait 10 years by agreeing to push reporting reform that whoever mining the mineral crisis put energy crisis security at risk to keep competition for minerals or being comic with China. Next is the critique. The one he sees narrative is the ultimate act of Joyce Sons only analyzing the planet as a political attachment to Drake and traverse the fantasies that guarantee extinction pull and spiral in 23 other serious problem. There is no action receiving the highway army and the distance between knowing and acting. Focus on enjoyment as political factor. Joyce Sons allows us to understand something that is enjoyed to consider enjoyment in discourses opens the way to abolition of human attachment to destruction of the planet, inaugurates possibility of real enjoyment. That since the political theory is placed enjoyment at the heart, individuals acting in self-interest actions that violate interest become a rule rather than exception. Enjoyment occurs through destruction rather than interest. Enjoyment is the work with destroying the planet. Enjoyment contributes to a crucial vector animating life to try to push to pleasure. Enjoyment is anxiety. Ribbons sometimes become caught in a circular repetitive process that fails to do with the fantasy produced. Enjoyment requires fantasy. The world of symbolic is always liking the real. Resist symbolic, absolutely geographical concepts like those seen enjoyment inherent to politics, the environment, or destruction at all. Share enjoy sponsor introduction of laws inherent part of the super command. The identification of holding the community together is not identification with the legislating plan of seen on her sites. The social one climate change is the price for enjoyment. Next is topicality. Vest requires us to grant all rights and duties. 726 Constitution fully granted that reservation phrase vest will deploy. There's finality. Vest right place. The whole supposes omitted to be the Constitution press. Vest is a duty vest of the whole Constitution. Not single out case the whole should be vested. Granting of individual rights and duties explodes limits and makes private impossible. Ask to grant infinite different rights to hundreds of individual groups in each area. Next is the drones. It's how the obstacles over even tiny modifications to legal status snowballs and broader substantive rights. McCall 18 smaller issues point to concern create danger and or other properties every words with others playground or for the purposes of procedural status can be gained a substantive status as artificial persons entitled to rights untouchably or but build on procedural foundations becomes procedural rights whereas corporations require status and procedural affairs accumulating protections are given our path dependent seems small decisions have significant ramifications. The AFF hamstrings use of drones for military operations 7 and 16 status would trigger unwanted legal consequences between rights and duties have to be respected. Death rights means it. A robot deployed in a hostile environment could refuse to cross dangerous zones where orders destruction. Why would you produce robots who not use nonsensical continue drone to be also Offensive also good enduring weakened group heroes from support acted as force multiplier also weapons fine in predictions of doom also weapons after village fighters were killed and drone strikes Somali army and intensive support from the US drone strikes are curtailing command and control New York strikes are the threat of them complicated by the operation and failure to be al-Shabaab caused broader Afghan instability BN-23 war terrorism spread from over al-Shabaab 80% operations on borders to the civil war region is central for al-Qaeda to think about geographical region and terrorism control the Horn of Africa Somali government can defeat al-Shabaab alone African instability causes extinction rate in 22 Africa's been seen the world affairs destroys it for a lot of reasons existential climate change overfishing deforestation mining combat a serious situation Africa's growing correlation of an impact large scale of source of recruits for extremist movements Congo rainforest vitally important for warming could also be the origin next pandemic such scenarios there's a matter of time but terrorist organizations can be noted social threat competition between forces and proxies Russia US and China seems like a core redux of Africa will have a significant effect on the impact on the world next the capitalism cause extinction dire were folded all 19A capitalism realized you shadows hunting in human power no considerable meaning besides civilization mankind is separate host on this master only purpose of cell what a man's fate is means of production capitalism automation must be defeated and destroyed capitalism all become an automated system with the AGI could become autonomous and humans with the base choice capitalist transhumanist death the world generate ultimate incarceration death and extinction would only be alternative world for 24/7 until the death of the universe seems to choice requires a communist revolution the alternative is obligations Earl in Matthew's 21 with the rights implies the capacity to foster general economic develop a critical obligation to right to be correlate priority of obligation to examine radical restoring of the laws critique of neoliberal biases of the rights of nature the right to be correlate demands a radical restoring obligation or who's by rights obligation contributes to effort to displace the individual subject into a liberal obligation can articulate new subjectivity by privileging obligation concepts package can be cast aside rights story and the individual to shift to the obligation draws attention to originary entitedness next the advantage counterplan the United States and chief of naval operations to declare that UUVs are warships require that all artificially intelligent naval vessels have a direct human supervisor either remote or on board who is held liable for any damage or loss and grant these supervisors the power to oversee offensive attacks and clarify the strict liability rules for ship owners are not conditional on the degree to which the vessel is autonomous and physical presence is not required to be liable or guilty for narcotic trafficking solves Drummond and 20 challenge comes where a decision not made by person by system high autonomy there's mechanism hold commuters few system responsible existing rules can be adapted to right clear path for claiming against systems operating degrees of autonomy by require system to be released supervisor human can be held responsible must be either general or subject meaning inherent ambiguity that would be a satisfactory equal to legal uncertainty but also to open interpretations of courts may render legislation suitable as tech develops under current capabilities not seem to restrict any requiring systems regardless of complexity to be directly supervised provide a simple solution to the whole market to the whole next the industry DA reducing legal barriers for autonomous vessels ensures a safe downfall of the shipping sector Marino and 20 vessels cross ocean without a crew that is the future. Many times they can by forecast for the development are still required by the technological and regulatory to reach the final stage. Crews are currently sailing by the sea, carrying a lot of forepart of the world's coffee. There's a lot of boats and lots of jobs depend on conventional shipping. Major obstacle for autonomous ships is legally automation will create new jobs. So they'll be different. The European Commission probably diligent observation will take on new jobs. All seafarers agree autonomous ships will destroy jobs. Seeing the consequences are the implementation of the machinery spaces like supermarkets they can sell. Check out. You forgot my customers. They end up disappearing automation sectors. Downfall crews will be cut and be available. Extremely low paid automated shipping is creating zombing and shipping jobs in the maritime industry. The backbone of economic stability. AB19. Time leaders recognize the impact of the maritime industry supporting jobs stability in the economy is determined the Transportation Institute finding the most recent study demonstrating that as the American maritime industry jobs provide economic security ensuring international free transportation system not subject to foreign interference American maritime jobs vital to the never-ending task of keeping America's safe contributions of employees made most significant economic engines in the domestic maritime industry market at domestic maritime industry decline causes war like Peru and Casserole in 23 based on sample 103 countries over 30-year period we find significant relationship negative shock leads to increasing conflict effects and events of fatalities results robust plausible variations suggest a vicious cycle of worsening economic conditions and deteriorating conflicts negative shock increase incidence of town conflict and events is a statistically significant way next the municipal person
skip that and then just go to the dissent.
Okay. Next, the dissent counterplan the 50 states and all of territory should clarify their intentions to vest artificially intelligent naval vessels with legal rights of belligerency on a 5-4 decision, which the dissent calls for the case to be overturned and clarifies the losing party would have won, where the case argued on federalism grounds. The United States Supreme Court should rule against vesting artificially intelligent naval vessels with a legal right of belligerency. Federalism dissent solves the case of Bard and Jacoby and 9 dissent signal how to frame cases increases as dissenting opinions to the judge laying the groundwork, enabling the court to reach an alternative conclusion. Dissent signal how to litigation fisher the majority can be exploited to use this federal state disputes federalism signals encouraging cases process as successful previous dissenting coalition subsequently in the majority dissents resulting cases as on federal state power signals transform losses into victories just as shape agendas and sets a federalist precedent. Barrett and Jacoby and 9 dissent suggested debate ought to be about state powers resulting in new cases from according to state powers. So the subsequent cases concern state dispute enable litigants make legal arguments minimal guarding new majority dissent have impact on cases entirely separate could have an impact on how litigants choose to frame many different causes. Extinction because in 19 inequality proliferation global terrorism and climate change are symptoms on less adjustments for failure of the next 20 years cause of failing of the government's federal system is unbalanced power concentrated federal level makes Washington targets of special interest create imbalances and gridlock dysfunction polarization and partisanship led to address systemic failure concentration power reach dysfunction to address inequality we need governance restoring checks and returning power to states the states we can get a path otherwise things will only get worse. Advantage 1 they don't solve China Carlic evidence says that vessels are tempting targets legal rights don't change Chinese perceptions doesn't solve illicit drug activity all causes overwhelm their evidence says that vessels help not that their key no risk of new terror Mueller and 17 limited desireless progress of tremendous effort is highly improbable the source would be discovered for the spread and deterrent loose nukes regardless of new state security very seriously it's unlikely that any have loss effectiveness would be non-existent problems are designed to trigger non-nuclear explosion multiple codes requiring ranks would have blocks and remain underguard building and destroying crowd prison to clay challenges. The process requires lengthy sequence of steps to seal would trigger intense policing to manufacture terrorists need a large, well-equipped shop with the skilled scientists will generate no suspicion that the terrorist group of advocated bomb is far-fetched at best. ISIS does not alter conclusions. Advantage 2 deployment is not inevitable. Legal status doesn't matter. Cueto says it's happening now. Armored car sales and military gains are immense. That's a huge incentive. Can't close a straight later. And 17. Iran would be high risk and attempting to even absent the U.S. would damage Iran's interest as a critical source of income. Any saying attempt would mobilize an overwhelming international coalition against Iran, like to way that would threaten the regime. There are practical obstacles. The waterway is wide and deep. Mining without early detection would be hard. Would only harass shipping personally and temporarily. Anti-ship missiles would not be effective against Brazilian tankers. No risk of Iran war hordes and 24 World War III overbuilding of many factors made war unlikely remains unchanged. Fear about escalation, trying to potentially through miscalculated escalation is rhetoric explained. Power kids really explode by accident or not the same as war distinguished protect from a war involving troops. Domestic politics has to break with the U.S. and Iran wars unpopular and likely to help Trump win a re-election. Trump is on stage. He doesn't want war. Runs leader stays in power. Does not risk the regime and costly war. Trump is backed away from Pence before Trump seeks an offer. Trump is likely to be punished if he lives. The U.S. is far more powerful and war would end Iran's regime. No oil wars. And 16 oil wars do not exist. Invasion, occupation, international investment costs reduce the payoffs of the important resources. Profiting is impossible. Petroleum prices are not valuable for oil to be contributed to war. These observations have positive implications for disputes in the SCS, ECS, East Med, and Arctic competition will not lead to complex prospective resources generate higher costs as countries must export instead of just reducing it. Payoffs are very uncertain. International costs remains high. The cost deter adversaries from fighting for oil. Doesn't solve food. Demining takes decades and the impact is in the short term, but it's minimal and resilient. From 3.8 world is much more resilient to food. We're living in an age of food abundance. Characterized food outlook for Egypt serious but not critical. Where famine is left from the national community can save lives. You can feeding Afghanistan population each year, but it's only very incidental aggravating factor. African agriculture to be extended as well. Intensify stress and not crisis. Crisis not happen to be catastrophic. Digital shifts means the resource wars won't happen. Kenny and 20s conflicts drag toward the third decade represents a historic change. Number of wars is declining. Where always a negative some resource getting benched to like lost our land no longer key to prosperity. Almost 2/3 driven by intuitive ideas rather than good. Can't be expropriated. Even Trump carried out. Carried out.
Okay,
Wait, carry out?
Yeah.
Even if Trump carried.
Am I missing? Oh, there it is. My bad.
Penny 20.
yeah, there we go.
Got it.
Y'all good for context?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Could y'all do me a favor and stand at one
starting
computer?
with the T vest is all. So your T argument is that like the AF would have to give autonomous vessels every right and duty that it possibly could exist.
It would have to vest all rights and duties to AI. Like you can't have individual subsets of AI. So like just vessels is not topical.
Okay, so just giving one type of right. Well, no, but your thing says granting of individual rights and duties. So
Which
it's
the app
giving
does.
rights. So I guess my question is like, let's take an example like a nature app. How could nature exercise like the right to vote?
Well, I mean, you would vest it with the right to vote. I mean, it's silly, but that's kind of how rights and duties work on a topic where it's in like not intuitive to us that nature can vote, but like you would give nature that right.
Okay, but
That's what our evidence says
so
is
you
what's
would-
topical.
okay, so an app would, so the ask on the topic would have to be some sort of AI nature or animals, and they are given every right and duty.
That is what Stebbins 26 says the Constitution tells us.
Sure, that's fine. Drones DA. So this DA, if I'm understanding correctly, is saying the app would spill over to rights for drones and then they wouldn't be used. The app is about giving like the right for AI to attack other countries. How could the app lead to a reduction in drone use?
The Mikulski evidence says that even if the app is like one individual instance of a right, that spills over into broad substantive rights. So no matter how nuanced you think your mechanism is, our evidence says that even that limited degree of giving rights results in more rights through like the legal system and the slippery slope that the app.
Okay, I guess, so this Nevegins evidence is basically saying like, if a robot had rights, it would like decide it didn't want to go into like a war zone.
Then it wouldn't be allowed.
Our a drone like can't think for itself. Like a drone is not advanced enough to do that in this ESCO. How would a drone getting it right cause it to like suddenly gain that?
Yeah, it's not just about like a drone coming to this moral recognition that it doesn't want to be in a hostile environment. It's about like when something has a right, then you can't deploy it in that hostile environment.
Okay.
Is what
I'm looking forward to that. That makes sense.
we read it.
I want to ask next about like the advantage counterplan. So declare that UUVs are warships. How does the counterplan do that without vesting belligerent rights?
Yeah.
Actually, those cards in the TNC.
Okay.
But the argument is that like worship is not synonymous with belligerent rights. Those are separate things. Like you can declare something worship without taking in any rights or duties in terms of person as the top.
Okay, that makes sense. The dissent counterplan. So my understanding of this is like states do the app, the Supreme Court strikes it down and says that federalism means things. Is your solvency argument going to be that eventually the Supreme Court would override the decision that the counterclaim has them do.
Yeah, because they will reference dissenting opinions.
So the Supreme Court would issue a subsequent decision saying
That's not a
actually.
fiated mandate of the counterplan, but what the Bard and Jacobi evidence says would happen.
Okay, does your counterclaim get durable fiat?
Like, do we get to durably fiat the planks of the counterplan? Like, yes, neg fiat?
Yes, durable fiat. Okay, cool.
Like, well, we don't get a durably fiat that it's not overturned.
Or do you just get to choose if the second plank actually happens?
We've read evidence.
I know, okay.
We've read evidence that will result.
We're gonna start prep at 10 minutes. Starting now.
I've never seen I've never seen those people in the
Yeah, exactly.
They were riding us.
Well, they thought it was funny. They thought it was funny, and you all asked like, "Is the plane on the CNN?" I'm like, "The plane's in the United States."
Yeah. You know, they're not.
Yeah.
That was the scene, actually. We invited them.
But you know, maybe. You never, you know.
Is that from
never
the-
know. Your front end, brother.
Okay, let me send it and then I'll give an order.
Because I like ideologically agree with her on like pretty much everything. I just feel like I'm slowly but surely balancing like all of these little habits, things. I thought those were just like, yeah, oh, there's something alumni or something. They're not sent it.
Oh, sorry, I literally just sent it.
Oh, no, you're good. I just think I didn't blank out. We also had some old nineties one figure around yesterday. Oh, I was like, wait, like which round are they on? I don't know. You gotta be pick and choose very careful.
Okay. Yeah. Worships. Minds. T. The advantage counter plan. The descent counter plan. AI cap. Psychoanalysis. Drones. The one about industry, the DA. Permitting reform. Yeah.
Ian, good and all that.
I have not looked at Ian yet. I'm sorry. Ian, how you doing? Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay, cool.
Say whatever.
Okay. Drop the China impact SDS war goes nuclear overconfidence and escalation control and entanglement of conventional nuclear weapons guarantee and averted escalation. That's the knowledge evidence. The plan does solve its sensitive immediate signal to China that any incursion on the United States warships will be considered an act of war because of the legal status beneath the convention. That's the McKinsey evidence. All causes to terror. Autonomous trade is key because it finances all terror operations and allows and facilitates the delivery of WD weapons. Yes, terrorism impact cause extinction, attribution, failure, mass panic, concise escalatory nuclear exchanges for Hayes. Yes, terror threat that's increasing efforts like Al Qaeda, Hezbollah, and Taliban are cooperating with cartels to facilitate movement. That's Ramirez acquisition is possible. Expertise, diverse skill sets, and fossil materials for our Haynes evidence of mining advantage. Iran war goes nuclear, creates closing the Strait of Hormuz causing U.S. retaliation. That's the Rabi evidence. Yes, our Kuwaito evidence does say deployment now. Our Robinson evidence agrees, but says that legal status, legal ambiguity constrains the Navy's questioning of where they can deploy autonomous warships safely because they believe that other countries will subject them to unwarranted search and seizure. They say Iran won't close the strait. Yes, they will, overconfidence of their own abilities, and they want to threaten the West. That's also supported by the following evidence. Devar in 23. Amid rising tensions between Iran and the European U.S. government's officials trying to block the Strait of Hormuz to issues both at the time the parliament ended through saying the legislature was preparing a resolution to block transit. The waterway is crucial to global energy. We will limit commercial straits in the strait, and we will take measures by blocking ships faster to practically block transit. Yes, oil volatility, it causes global war dependence like Russia and Saudi succumb to domestic instability causing diversionary conflict. That's Clausen prefer our evidence, or is there evidence is about scarcity, not volatility. Mining does not take decades. Actually, it's pretty quick. Delugian 22. Mine's preventing Ukraine from safely resuming exports. How long would it take to open lakes? It could go rather quickly. It would take weeks. So whatever route that would be safe for shipping, that would take a month to clear the whole area of mines. No resilience. resiliency. No food abundance now. Ukraine supplies critical food for hundreds of millions. No alternative can fill in that immediately causes food insecurity and war. The digital shift doesn't matter because we haven't made an impact argument about war for wealth, and they marked the card before the argument about oil. We mean plain text in a vacuum. We've defined the words in the plan as a solvency question, not a T question. Counter-termination vested doesn't mean all of the civil grants. 21. Textual reading of the word vested with the first of the available dictionaries of the words usage. Vested, not connoted exclusivity, special status meaning vested was unclear. Ordinary meaning of civil grant powers produces 1,000 different uses. Suggests vested, not a conditional power. Preferred first plain meaning that always precision, only predictable limit guides education. Second is Afghan picks are unbeatable and F literature as far as brings the game for the NEG and causes burnout from side disparity. Granting all rights are untenable. Can't even define every existent right. The right to get married, vote, etc. And there are many rights that humans don't even have. Third, functional limits nearest person. Create any flavor, K flavor, Viscon, keep the NEG in the game. Fourth, reason. At least some debate solves substance crowded advantage kind of plan. Permutation do both. Permutation do the counterplan. Permutation do the plan of the first plank of the counterplan. Permutation do the first plank of the counterplan. It is the plan. That's Mackenzie. When a ship is declared a warship, it is automatically granted belligerent rights, e.g. the rights to exercise any conduct necessary to win a war, sovereign immunity, the right to be free from arrest, seizure, etc. That's how international law works. Sorry you don't have a card about it. Counterplans must be textually and functionally. That ensures that benefits are germane to the plan and incentivizes case engagement, solves education. That's the only permanent benefit of debate. Autonomous vessels themselves must be vested belligerent rights. The counterplan, the liability planks of the counterplan are nonsensical because it says that some entity other than the vessel has some form of liability or rights that magnifies existing confusion over the legal status of naval vessels, dividing protein providing for adversaries. That's McKinsey, Robinson, other planks to solve its legal status that matters. The thing that enjoys belligerent rights is the ship itself, planet on 20. The status available at MIVs matter for the laws of naval warfare. The thing that enjoys rights of a vessel under naval rules such as mere passage is an independent vessel. Absent that designation, autonomous vessels lose value. That's McKinsey and Nasu 20. The legal status of warships carries particular significance in that warships are entitled to exercise belligerent rights. Lands would use much of their strategic and tactical value if the states treated the platforms nearly as ships, but not as warships without any independent entitlement to exercise belligerent rights. The descent kind of plan. Permutation is do both. It still issues on a ruling on a 5-4. Permutation to the plan and on a 5-4 decision in which is that the text of the counterplan you've inserted? Okay. Permutation to the counterplan. A, the United States can be the 50 states. B, the counterplan functionally guarantees a ruling for the AFF. No solvency. A, durable fiat. The counterplan means the federal government can never do the AFF. The counterplan fiat the government strikes down the plan. Durable fiat means that 6B states can solve. The Navy Sea now has sole jurisdiction to declare warships. Not even the courts could override them. C, asserted the counterplan says conflicting signals. Sort of interpretations key to spill over to deter China. That's our swing. Evidence no net benefit. First, dissent solves now. Many cases have ruled in favor of federalism. Second, they have no evidence. Court decisions are key to federalism actions that solve their impact. Third, federalism worse for solving every impact. Western 22. The states intensify conflict, escalate policy, nullification, immigration, row, marijuana, assault weapons, federalism is integrated, tolerant terrain. The third is democracy. There's a power reshuffling that will have profound ramifications. The CAPK. Framework. The ballot is referendum and the consequences of the plan. Any links must be to the implementation of the plan that must be on all that causally solves or harms with the inclusion of the plan, including solvency. Key to fairness. Plan focuses the most predictable and non-arbitrary. And other exposed shifts the goalposts, which means the 1AC. Second permutation to both. Third cap is good. A war. Dresner 16. The client didn't say actually they agree with this. They read the econ impact on the trade DA. Second, warming. Clean energy is rapidly superseding fossil fuels, which is a wish to avoid tipping points. Well, it was in 21. Thanks rapid ethical revolution of renewable energy. Global politics expectation is for 3 degrees. Just bringing us closer to 2. If each half degree marks at a different level of suffering, we shaped after few not much time at all nations. I made ambitious pledges for future action. The solar power, the cheapest in history. India will build less coal power. It means rapid decarbonization, environmental anxiety. Some neoliberalism. The infiltrated of 187 corporate pledges. 138 will be met. Stimulus spending. Just 1/10 of stimulus spending would be sufficient to deliver Paris and stop warming spending. Seems doable. Mark that card at doable. The other case is the alternative. If it rejects capitalist AI, then that won't be deployed in the military. It doesn't solve any advantage. No bad AI capitalism, no AGI, and it would be friendly. Guard 16. The first AIs are friendly. We have plenty of opportunities for doers. The first agents are quite clumsy. That gives us opportunity to tweak programming. We can guide their world development. Clumsy AIs are unlikely to be good at forming plans relevant to the world. We are likely to notice malevolent acts. We will be able to reprogram the AIs. Human programmers can socialize AIs. The past is incremental. It all fails. Capitalism is inevitable. AI production is already happening, and companies will crush resistance. Obligations don't solve any of their links. They don't challenge AI. If they don't challenge AI, and if it so results in innovation, then they've said that's bad. Psych. Okay. Cross-supply framework, use consequentialism, so 1917. Intellectual undertakings requires prudence in making statements about what is good or inevitable assumptions by linearity that have a responsibility based on choice upon abstract principles that treatment habits as unintended consequences are politically dangerous. Such attitudes led to disaster initiatives such as invasion of Iraq casualties. Rwanda provide examples of how by uncritically following rules, UN peacekeepers permitted atrocities. Permutation to both. Permutation to the F and the alternative in all other instances. Psychoanalysis is racist. Rejected. Caution 13. Psychoanalysis aligned with racist tropes. Colonialism is problematic for psychoanalysis. It is ingrained in thinking terminology. This has effects on contemporary theory and practice in ways that are not recognized. History research back to the beginning of psychoanalysis. Freudian descriptions or unsaid terminology of the barbarian remained in this language just with references to primitive feelings and rationalities given priority attached to masculine reason. The unreason attributed to women, children, and primitive cultures is derogated subject to imperialism. Drone CA. No link, first, no precedent. The plan fiats and administrative classification of autonomous vessels into the naval vessel register. That's performed exclusively by the chief of naval operations, primarily at 22. If USP will engage in hostilities, must be designated warship. If the CNO exercises competence to designate UUVs as warships, it's the simplest amendment to naval policy. Gasly. And 23. By amending publications, the Navy can clarify and refine mass policy, and ensure commanders are on firm legal footing. That means no precedent that supports broader rights for non-human entities. Second is narrowing courts will justify denying future AI rights. Mokodu 22. Partial capacity allocate capacities as justified as opposed to precedent, which asks us to justify subtraction. Partial legal capacity solves the slippery slope of having to justify denying rights to AI. The law treat entities as persons for a particular purpose and not other appointed purposes. Flexibility. Not only is a person who are at stake. An entity could be a person for a specific purposes only. No internal link. No reason. Rights prevents using less advanced AI during wartime. Non-artificial intelligence drones solve the impact. African instability. Impact is a meme. Decades empirically disprove it. Industry DA. No link. Their evidence is about commercial shipping, not military. The plan doesn't affect liability for commercial shipping. It always remains with the ship owner. Even if a vessel, autonomous vessel exists now, the AFF doesn't facilitate autonomous ship development. They're here now and in the military. That's our Robinson evidence. We only change the legal status that facilitates naval operations in more dangerous and contested areas. Autonomous ship development is needed to avert impending labor shortage, to solve trade sheds. Wicked 16. Globalization of modern society would not be possible without commercial maritime shipping. Shipping responsible for 90% of the global trade. Global shipping utilizes 50,000 merchant ships and over 1 million seafarers. Despite growth, shipping is struggle to find seafarers except for global feed. Demand exceeds supply. The size of the U.S. fleet has decreased only 393 flag vessels in the Marine fleet. UAVs can solve the impending shortage, cut costs, and improve efficiency and safety. Vessels as a whole could be more efficient. No econ impact well to 20. I did not think even extraordinary economic conditions have much impact on war. The U.S. has suffered 40 recessions and about 20 wars related to the economy. If recessions cause more than they would predict in 9 out of the last 5 states, not some wars. Unless they believe they will win achieve victory, the motivation for wars is security and economic conditions are one factor among many is rarely the most significant. Permitting. No link. Plan is enable command. PC loads FSFP and international crises. New command 323. But its approval rating is the lowest of its presidency. Big failures have thwarted the approval about it to scribble. Republicans targeted the president on the 10 link of the U.S. economy, violence, domestic battles, compatible by international events, Russia and China, Ukraine, baking decade debacle thumbs showing in 316. Big collapse forcing the federal government to intervene in the political fallout, provided there's approval ratings on the economy are already deep underwater, could be considerable even before last week. America's little confidence in the stability of the economy. Willow thumbs, everyone's mad. Justice in 314 will trigger the public relations crisis for the White House left-wing activists condemned the administration might have set both the left and right duly be criticized. The presidency approving Willow and furious as he's playing a dangerous game, won't pass the retraction with Dems in either house. Who like at 314. Republicans unveiled legislation to speed up the approval of energy projects. It's unlikely to win in the Democratic-controlled Senate. Manchin moved to attach its proposal to spending last year, but those efforts crumbled. The contrast between Dems and House Republicans cannot be more stark. Lawmakers compartmentalized program in 18. Amid turmoil, Congress approved aviation policy measure to combat opioid abuse by partisan water and infrastructure measures. McConnell hailed bipartisanship, even as senators fought over Kavanaugh on the same breath. Lawmakers can find themselves in Berkeley over a major issue. Yet a forged major bipartisan accords on either. Lawmakers compartmentalize their disputes. Energy independence is the status quo. Rapier 22. The U.S. is still energy independent. The U.S. is a net exporter. Net imports have been declining since 2005 during Trump's net import turned negative. We gained energy independence. Once we gained energy independence, we never lost it. The average coal goes to zero, but it never changed back to an import situation.
Go back to the history again. Do you
Yep.
want to scratch that card for
Well, I didn't read the
that ball card?
I didn't read the Dresner card on the K.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, you sound good.
I think that.
Because then there'd be feedback.
This is okay. Okay, are there ones?
Yep.
Okay, there are no theoretical considered of the team.
Nope.
Okay. I want to ask, what do let ships do? Like, what does the legal right of belligerency give? Is it just the McKinsey evidence says a warship must have a crew and be commanded?
No, so that is a threshold requirement for being considered a warship. Our evidence says that autonomous vessels can be considered warships beneath international law if the CNO determines that staffing requirements can be done remotely.
So that's
The
what
belligerent right.
what is-
So belligerent rights are a completely separate question from what you brought up. Belligerent rights themselves are simply the right to do anything you want during a war.
So, okay, that's what you vest in ships, the ability to do anything they want during a war. So I'm
It's
confused
the
why
right.
you involve
No,
the-
it is the right to be a belligerent entity. So what that means is that you are free from arrest, you're free from seizure.
Examples of belligerent they do like scare the shit out of these drug traffickers.
Okay, so scare out of drug traffickers or China, because warships would respond to. Okay, so like in the context of China, for example, a warship has the legal authority to launch a missile at China. A naval auxiliary or a non-warship does not have that legal authority.
So the argument for why you said you sold China though is it sends signals to China that incursions on ships is an act of war. China thinks now that if they attack our ships, it's not an act of war.
No, because if you attack a naval auxiliary that doesn't have warship status, if you attack, for example, a ship or a system. Yeah, but that's a completely different question. If China, so for example, in 2016, China attacked one of our sea gliders that was unmanned, but that sea glider was designated a ship or a system, but not a warship. And the reason that China attacked those is because they knew legally that they would not incur an act of war.
So besides, attacking on Hunter's naval vessels, what are other things?
What do you mean by what are other things that they're doing?
What are other things that China or these drug cartels or whatever are doing?
is causing these.
So, well, yeah, one scenario on advantage one about China literally just seizing our own ships because because the status of the ship itself is ambiguous, right? China doesn't think that they will incur any cost for doing so because they don't know that these ships are actually warships and property of the US military. So, those scenarios are just about naval deployment of warships being good.
Okay. In the
So-
context of- in the
so-
context-
sorry, go.
hold on. Okay, in the context of advantage two, the argument you made in the JC was that legal status constrains questions of deploying it safely because other countries will search it. Like the US thinks other countries are going to search our unarmed vehicles, but then makes them not, like the US think that they're not gonna search them. Why?
Precisely. So our Robinson evidence says that because these autonomous vessels are not declared as warships, then other countries think they have the legal authority to seize them because they want to ascertain their seaworthiness. It's the second piece card on advantage one.
The first part of advantage one says that they're fully being deployed now, they're being used for ocean activities. And then the only line about repercussions for legal framework says, for example, Singapore, Japan, and South Korea announced their plans to use MAVs for activities.
Wrong card.
It says that other
No,
countries-
wrong card. First half of the card of the card on advantage one is about the Navy's hesitancy to deploy warships in dangerous or contested areas because they think that other states will misinterpret their maneuvers.
Everyone else is muted and everything. Okay. The order is the dissent counterplan. Then the advantage counterplan. Then the warships advantage. And then what's the name of the second one? Mining. The mines. Okay. Let me send this out.
This week. Yeah, it's only gonna get better. Then it was a Canada, so it was a lot.
I haven't heard that names.
Right. Dope, yeah. D3 trauma.
Okay. Is anyone not ready?
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, now, good.
Yep.
Okay.
The counterplan of the entirety of the case situation does not include a solvency deficit. It's actually tied to any of their advantages. The permutation at first, the counterplan is mutually exclusive. It rules the opposite way of the plan, rejecting one of your explanation because it is impossible to predict if the block and late breaking debates are bad and encourage sandbagging too. If the plan can be combined with something that strikes it down, booting on perception, judges and politicians who eat the plan would roll it back. Solvency is an stock issue and they haven't read evidence of this interpretation of the plan itself. Now, the next permutation solves nothing. It just does the plan and then overturns the case. Then has go to do the case. That doesn't reestablish federalism since there's no state test case that can be done in the first place. It doesn't allow the states to bring the case and argue in it, which proves that the interlink benefit is not resolved by this firm. If it's anything else, then it's literally just firm to the counterplan. I'll go there now. Firm to the counterplan. It's blatantly severance. The counterplan rules in the opposite direction of the plan with the possibility of a future case. Competition must be based on the mandate, not affect anything else. Blurs the distinction between theory and substance. Anything could be in the plan if an election wins the result in the app. That doesn't justify firm to the counterplan versus counterplans with election that benefits their interpretation. Eliminates all counterplans because they leave the plan somewhere down the road, and it proves the F isn't topical. One vested means absolutely settled in law. None of this is mutually exclusive when any of their interpretations vested, because even if it does not mean all rights, it still means that the counterplan is an expectancy of unsettled law, but the plan is not. That's row 21. The meaning of vested and settled and completed and not subject to be defeated enemy or expectancy does not constitute vested. Two, a legal right or duty means the legal system sides with the app. That's the opposite of the counterplan. That's U.S. legal. No date, duties, and rights and legal definition. Duty and entitlement in law and statutes provide the legal framework, and laws must provide the legal framework, and moral right cannot be the basis for seeking relief through the legal system. There must be a law creating right before that right can be enforced through the legal system. If it can't be enforced, it doesn't exist. Of law 18.9 enforcement means non-protection. If the duty cannot be enforced, no duty exists, and there is no legal right. Resolved means fixed. That's Western Dictionary. A 96 resolves having a fixed purpose. Should is mandatory. That's Court of Appeal. Arizona 02. The should is most commonly used to express mandatory rather than discretionary. The resolution is an instruction. Should means must. Kansas 78. Dependence or should is permissible. We do not agree. Instruction and these obligations that should not be misunderstood. Prefer one. Their definitions expose the misunderstanding ground of the plan doesn't have to be immediate, durable, or certain, or delayed. That means delay, consult conditions, and recommend all legal affirmative grounds, and everyone will right say no when he sees in to street process advantages to encourages poor controversy, only forcing it depends on durability and certainty. So causes the large asset to pursue aggressive rights theories. 3. If we win theory, should be competitive. We'll further debate is desirable. Allowing the counterplan is the only way to force it. The choice does not include a theoretical objection to the counterplan. Now competing interpretations are best. The alternative race on topical off multiple us at the opener prove if they win competition, vote negative on presumption. They are saying the plan can be the court rules against the plan. Politics links proves that the plan on face is unpopular or not. Fiating certain means it won't pass. If they get the strategic benefit of we fiat no court roadblocks, then they also have to pay the strategic cost of making that argument. Now, the next argument is the F is only the states. That's sub point A to their perm argument. 2 is clarification of the actor is a voting issue and encourage striking dissent in the Tracy and moods. One is construction strategy causes bad late breaking debates. Cross-ex can't check because they explicitly said that they wouldn't answer it. If this is a permanent thing, clearly intrinsic neither the plan nor the counterplan fiats. States passing the plan, voting negative for predictable limits and ground allowing state action makes the topic limitless and leaves zero link ground for court disad the one in our one. So the argument, if the United States means states the counterplan fiats the state courts, which would still do the plan because the federalism it doesn't best and isn't a right or duty in the federal system doesn't depend. That was on purview of the counterplan. If the plan can just be the states plus code is strike down or preemption, then you should vote negative on presumption. That was explained above. The next argument is that the counterplan functionally guarantees rulings for the F. It does not. We were clear about that in cross-ex. The reason that the counterplan sets the F is because it sets the conditions where the plan can be argued on federalism ground and has code is clarified through a dissenting opinion that it would have one. We have the only empirical evidence that it immediately creates a new federalism of jurisprudence and causes the court to overturn the case. That's the Baird and Jacobi evidence. No deficit assumes federalism dissent. That's a Baird and Jacobi 09 dissenting opinions. I mentioned the state power suggest possible ways to frame crisis this high across ideological bonds, and it is effective in dissent policy outcomes in federalism, dissenting signals based on federalism succeeding in moving the policy and the dissenting coalition to a direction and signaling has value beyond relitigation, and signals can cause new events. These results have significant implications, including signaling federalism and judicial agenda setting, and judicial signaling occurs and is a powerful tool in signaling shape judicial agendas. There is a significant increase in federalism rather than the signaling shape outcome based on justice grounds on which providing a person earlier outcomes suggest the important results indicate the achieving the reverse outcomes, and those strategic priorities that highly effective litigants are highly responsive to federalism grounds allow new majorities. Congress falls on. That's Brian and Jurgens, like 16 dissenting authors seek to induce governmental actors such as Congress opinions and by Congress overriding Congress overrides at a higher rate, and they encourage Congress, the president of governmental actors, Congress to see their call and introducing legislation within days. Such an extreme strategy can be effective. Now, the first argument about durable fiat, we durable fiat that the case loses because of lack of federalism ground. There's follow on which is we don't fiat that argument. Now the states can solve via the second plank. The Navy CNO has sole jurisdiction argument does not apply because the Supreme Court would overrule that as per the counterplan text, which means that then the Navy CNO would just not have the sole jurisdiction. Hello, welcome to fiat. Now follows on. That's Kingsburg sent dissenting to attract immediate public attention. That propel legislative change. The ball is in Congress court. I wrote Congress responded within days, and Congress passed the act. No certainty internal link in the one. China would see how even SCOTUS thinks that these things are implementary rights should be passed. Federalism solves mass prolif terror, climate change by preventing mass gridlock and partisanship that causes systemic failures in government. That's Michagas. The 2C West evidence is about marijuana, Roe, and immigration. Shitty, sure. Extinction, absolutely not. Federalism causes blackouts, and actually no, because they didn't even read any defense. The dissent stuff about not solving dissent does spill over relitigation develops doctrine. It shows that against the federalism strategy can change a losing case to a winning one. That signal causes a slew of federalism cases, and even if we don't solve the case, we still have negative offense because we fiat and dissent. That's the beer intercoe evidence. The court decision stuff, it is key to solve. We read evidence that specifically says that when that relitigation occurs, then the dissent sort of spills over and causes people to bring cases. Federalism is not worse. Answered above. Now the advantage counterplan, we're kicking off the 1 and C counterplans. We're reading a new 2 and C counterplan. The new F justifies it, and they didn't reconditionality in the 2C. The United States should massively increase funding for autonomous naval vessels and deploy them in areas rampant with maritime drug trafficking in the Strait of Hormuz and the Black Sea, and allow them to engage in wartime conduct. Ban and the South China Sea, ban investing artificially intelligent naval vessels with legal rights of belligerency. Declare that attacking or seizes autonomous naval vessels is an act of war. Declare that the U.S. will launch a nuke at any entity that attacks or seizes autonomous naval vessels. No 1AC card ties this belligerent right shit to an impact. Cross said every single scenario except China is just about deploying autonomous naval vessels, which was that the first plank solves, and the third and fourth plank solve the China stuff by threatening them away from attacking or seizing these ships. Even though we are still very, very doubtful that this is even true, I don't think China thinks that they can just get away with literally attacking our ships. Now the 2NC blank also bans granting the ship the right itself, which checks against any permutation arguments in the 2EC being classified, or any links to that benefit argument will be in the 1 and R. Now the warships advantage at the top. There is zero internal links to the China scenario. The evidence says that providing sovereign immunity for warships allows them to avoid seizure and inspection by other ship, but no 1AC card connects that to miscalculation with China or says that China is going to do any of that shit. Their evidence is saying that if anything, more autonomous ships cause their impacts. The 1AC card evidence says that autonomous systems are proliferating and commanders feel emboldened to strike platforms. US commanders are striking those platforms, which means that China will still be incentivized to plan. The 1AC has no evidence that illicit maritime drug activity is high now, and the one card that they have is the status quo descriptive while naval deterrence is so strong now. Their evidence says that the existence of these ships is what's the deterrence. It does not lead to nuclear. No card says that El Chapo is going to acquire a nuke and accidentally detonate it. No card says that drug cartels or lords know the difference between different NATO ships. What is it? Like they just think our AI is much cooler than our normal ships? I have no idea what any of this means or why any of these drug lords would kill. Naval power is resilient and there's no impact. As Easter 18 arms race stopped, and so today when they fighting and SEALs have seas have been quiet for 75 years and big fights have come to a halt, as has naval competition numbers. So carrier groups contest by the US and 10 versus all other nations combined 0 and US naval size power and competence by banished fighting in for a half century. No nation even attempt to contest naval dominion in China and Russia possess no super carriers and have none done destruction. Now the China impact scenario for US China miscalc. That's low 22. The nuclear escalation is not like this. I believe modern early warning systems are capable of calculating trajectory potential impact points. The US decision maker not have much to lose by winning. The US has very survivable sea-based deterrent and significantly more nuclear warheads than China. Nearly possible for China to disarm the US in the first strike in China. Extraterrestrial scenario which US would park conventional weapons on one. This could drive nuclear retaliation under user elusive mentality. Yet upon closer examination, such an idea is flawed. Market flawed. Wars are not started by accident. What the hell does this even mean? Why would China just accidentally start a war with the United States? There's no evidence that they'll have to do it in the South China Sea or that they have any incentive to do it in the status quo. They haven't launched it throughout the course of terrorists, Trump, etc. Then why would they do it now? Now, COVID, drug trafficking, there's no uniqueness for this argument that's linking 20 state-wide lockdown orders. They started the traffickers' operation, making it more difficult to launder money and move across the border, and it's costing drug traffickers millions, and their methods of moving money have been compromised. Disruptive ways cartels do business. The cartels typically rely on international Asian criminal organizations to clean their cash and lockdown deprived traffickers of using the first link to their sophisticated operation. Coronavirus is also affecting drug prices. We will accept the terror impact because the winner will be straight turning the status quo. So all other impacts, the UN has already passed a bunch of policies in the context of terrorist findings, saying they have no reason why they need the F to solve. Now, the mining advantage, their only internal link card is about ambiguity in South Korea and China causing bad deployment. Here is the card for context. It specifically talks about why mining detection in South Korea has failed and while China is sort of taking down the Philippines. No 1AC card says that you need belligerency rights to and operational advantage. Here's what I see. McCall for context. All it says is that UBs offer significant advantages now, which is what Mickey basically admits in cross-text deployment is inevitable. Legal status doesn't matter. The court of evidence says it's happening now. McCall says that primacy gains are immense. Iran has no incentive to close the strait. The Treaty to our evidence has no clause. Evidence says that they feel threatened now by the UE. No way the US doing some shit which shifts is going to provide those broader incentives that they have to do with extend the one and see laser evidence. They can't close the strait. Or evidence says that the US would stop them, the EU would stop them all. Everyone would stop them. And it means that these resilient tankers would not allow them to sort of execute any of these anti-missile technologies. Now there's no risk of an Iran war. The Horowitz evidence says that it's completely overblown. It remain unchanged. There's no reason that Iran will be incentivized, and the US has a ton of other deterrent checks that prevent it from doing it. The oil and war and food stuff is basically all the same shit. The mine stuff, no internal link, no oil wars. The murder evidence specifically says that the digital shift does stop. They dropped that there's no impact uniqueness because shocks across Afghanistan, Ukraine, and oil have stopped. The digital shifts does solve. The one and Kenny evidence says that resources like oil don't even escalate despite massive global reserves. Countries ask are risk averse unless it collapses their economy, which proves that the disad will turn the case. Yeah.
Ian, you good? Can you hear me? Cool. Okay, so very slowly and like I'm a third grader, like walk through the what happens with the counterplan temporally.
Yes, sure. So the first thing that happens is that the states attempt to do the plan, right? They attempt to do whatever the thing is you do with the vessels.
Yeah, got it.
Then on a 5-4 decision, in which the Supreme Court obviously, does not agree with the plan, the dissent calls for the case to be overturned. It clarifies that the only way the losing party would have won the case, like the state would have won the case, is if it was argued on federalism grounds, right? That then prompts.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. States try to do the plan. Supreme Court rules against the plan. The 4 people on the bottom of the decision say they petition for an appeal, or like they call for, or not an appeal, call for an overturn, right? And
No. The dissent just writes their case to say that the reason that they dissented is because they think the case should have been argued on federalism grounds. That then causes litigants to bring cases on federalism grounds. And if you had made this deficit, we have far more evidence that we could have read in the 2NC that specifically says that then that causes the Supreme Court to rule in favor of the plan.
Why wouldn't the 5 justices on the Supreme Court who
needed to be a 2AC argument, because we have a lengthy block to that, but I'll still answer it. The Baird and Jacoby evidence specifically talks about how the fact that these judges, in their dissenting opinion cited that they would have ruled in that direction had it been on federalism grounds, means that they would not just be super fucking insane in the context of that and just ignore the precedent that they sent in their opinions and not rule in that direction.
Okay, so you're telling me there are 5 not crazy Supreme.
You didn't say this in 2AC.
Doesn't matter.
It does matter. It does matter. That's how debate works.
There are 5 justices on the Supreme Court who would, just because some litigant invoked federalism precedent, would say that we can devolve naval authority to the states.
If you keep asking this question, I'm going to spread the 2NC block through it. We have specific evidence that says that justices change their mind, and specifically that if they specify the distinct grounds that the courts would have used to rule in their favor, then they will still do it, because
why would any Supreme Court justice in their right mind want to give Kansas the authority to register a naval vessel?
We have read pieces of evidence that say that federalism grounds outweigh the content of the decision, right? They don't care about what the plan actually means. They care that they specify federalism.
Yeah.
So is the final outcome of the counterclaim that the state, the final outcome of the re-ruling that happens after your counterclaim is implemented, is it the state doing it or the federal government doing it?
We've read Congress follow on and state follow on.
Okay, so those are the 2 possible outcomes.
Yeah, and that the Supreme Court overrules this whole only the Navy can decide on the ships thing.
Wait, how?
Well,
because the Supreme Court says that they'll win the cases.
But that's not a fiated mandate of the counterclaim. That's the follow-on argument.
Right, but we think that by specifying that in their dissenting opinion, that would then mean that when the case reemerges, the court would rule in the direction of accepting the plan on federalism grounds.
Okay.
Okay, the one in R was sent. Everyone's good for an order. It's the CAPK, psychoanalysis. The industry DA, the permitting DA, advantage 2, and then advantage 2 and then the drones DA. But I can do that again.
Yeah, it's like,
Industry, permitting, advantage 2, drones.
Permitting and then advantage 2, then drones. Okay.
Yep. Okay, Ian, are you good? Okay, awesome, thanks. I'm gonna close out of Zoom. Okay. Everyone good? Okay, great. Can see the permit justice as a competition. We're not going for it. The psychoanalysis K can see the permit justice as a competition. Psycho-racist is a reason to reject the argument. Not the team that industry DA can see no econ impact takes out any offense. Not going for it. The permitting reform DA can see it won't pass in the status quo with energy independence. That solves conflict with China because I want to see urban evidence as the independence checks China's leverage, which stays off conflict. Advantage 2, finishing the digital shifts mean war won't happen. Card Kenny 20. His plan to expropriate oil and despite our rock share reserves war would not have economically worse. Our lunch reasons domestic quality or ideology disconnected from both. Next, the drone CA African instability has an impact filter filters. The ability to solve climate change, overfishing, deforestation, mining, pandemics, and agriculture, existential fuels conflict with U.S. Russia and China. The 2022 turns the AFF into a more proximate scenario for conflict between the US and China. The bezels don't solve instability spills over to Rwanda and turns advantage 1. Drones are key to counterterrorism. Sales in 22 drones play an important role. Counterterrorism strategy strikes remove leaders and high value targets and minimal risk terrorists recognize the effectiveness of drone strikes. They strikes to great organization strikes are planning against terrorists go to the round to discover daily company targets hard to play offense strikes and eliminate networks creating intelligence collection. The link alone turns the whole case assigning legal status to AI complicates and undermines our ability to send them to dangerous combat zones that makes it legally impossible to mine since they're in dangerous zones. The AFF cannot topically be one person randomly in the military. One only does Congress and the court have ruled there's no standing unless Congress grants it. If they wanted another actor, it had to be in the plan. Hoax 21 legal person would require the entity to be recognized. The next state Congress would have authority to recognize standing. If an act of Congress plainly states standing, animals have statutory standing, does not. Animals do not have statutory standing. 2 personhood is a congressional power. Caperna in 28th in the U.S. Congress holds the power to determine AI legal personhood. That means only Congress can extend it daily 15. Legal person only Congress can send legal person to non-human. 3, the plan must be Congress resolved means legislative will. Jones, it's the strongest enacted. Jones and 1903 legislative record resolved as 3 equivalent of enacted. Continued usage of persuasive not conclusive word was adopted declared legislative rules were enacted. Key to limits in ground 1, changing the actor to one individual which court decides which are about legal processes. Alternatives allow infinite agencies that don't have binding power. Think of your state senator, the head of the Department of Labor, VP Harris, one Supreme Court justice. There are infinite actions that core topic questions that outweighs better topic structurally incentivize app teams to raise the margins of the lid base which overstretch the research burden for the neg makes debate impossible. The neg will rush towards timeless hypergenerics that are designed to clash with everything as opposed to engaging in nuanced links, nuanced clash over the specific mechanism which link turns all their offense to the topics about the potential spillover of taking federal action on rights and duties. Their interpretation eliminates politics. Disad based on federal agents. Spillover disad links since they depend on the courts setting a precedent, and even just based on linking core politics, court law called via agency mechanisms. Even if the AF is one person, it still links. It sets a precedent that challenges upheld in the court, and the AF has the government recognize the AI can have legal rights. That ends the use of drones for military operations. Assigning legal status to AI complicates and undercuts our ability to send them into combat zones if they're empowered with rights. Commanders won't legally or ethically be able to force them to go into harm's way to support offensive operations not suitable for humans. That's Nevin's for her over their uncarded assertions. She's a law professor and subject matter expert. The status quo allows us to use AI as tools to serve human ends in dangerous situation. The AF gets in the way. Perkin 20 speeding robot rights infringe on existing rights of humans today. One of the benefits of robots that work under conditions unsafe and dangerous to the human. Think of robots unable to disable bombs. Robots are given rights to make go unethical to place them in the harmful situation where they have a chance of injury or destruction. Guaranteeing even small increments of legal status raises broader issues of robots' rights that enables refusal of orders. Scope and 17 robots is legal subject entangled with consciousness. Even if still criminal law makes sense, this isn't pertinent connected to rights. Assigning legal personality may not be perfect. The legal robot recognized legal subject would have rights. This would not robot would refuse to dismantle bomb due to probably getting damage, go on a checker, demand leave, and even the perception that AI has moral status will block their use in dangerous applications like military drones and the AF. Degrassi in 22 and robots have status presented element and humanity want robots to perform certain tests to remove dangers. But if robots have their own interests and their own disadvantages that were consideration of peace rights that will block appeals to utilities justification for using them in ways contrary to their interests, they will have a right to pursue their own plans. We might accidentally motivate claims that are unlawfully exploiting beings, and robots rights activists will seize on the app, use it as a wedge to push for AI self-determination. Goal 717, the potential of AI opens up avenues for military field with the increase of vehicles and become a common object of research issues, right? The ability to AI's ability to feel and act rationally, giving rise to only multiple ethical problems within legal norms. Regulating AI, we can expect to see robot activists commanding for robots civil reasons as well as self-determination. That prevents human control and tasking authority. Grave 17 activists of rights extend right to be preservation and autonomy to establish rights to be dangerous. That is extremely dangerous for humanity. Lively robots beings over which have no right to control can consequences. We ought to legislate from the same point that they're machines under full human responsibility without rights. And granting rights to AI directly limits for military application. KF 22 rights are complex with minimal granting rights to AI may their future open doors the limit to species and curtails such rights may limit humans rights granted to AI. Right complications may remain limited use or exploitation of AI for various private sectors and military applications. Narrowing is wrong. 1. The plan leads to massive expansion of AI rights and duties even if alone it's just a small change. The AF is a wedge in the door that allows the case for what a substantive rights to gain a foothold that leads society down a slippery slope, eventually culminating in full and complete class of rights being awarded. History proves that's Mikulski too. Their evidence does not say the courts will legally justify denying rights. It explains the concept of partial legal capacity as the author understands it. 3, granting any increment spills over Abbott in 20, and these are legal personality. It would be a dramatic change. Legal personality can result in anthropomorphism. People expected here to social norms, higher expectations, position of trust, irrelevant, accountable state and ways reserved for only humans, confirm legal personality and lead to rights creepy and vague. If a few no rights and initially granted, and maybe acquire rights over time. 4, new legal norms cannot be instituted in the vacuum from the 19th thought. Other side is dramatically impacted with new legal norms and other norms in the relation with one another. New role and the application or conflict of other norms connecting the legal person would lead to a storm that affect a lot of institutions to make a decision. Empowerment of AI with legal personality would change the legal system as a whole. Yes, rights prevent using drones. That was all read above just now. The tweets he does not include a war and other drones don't solve. Our argument is that no drones will be used. We'll drop that as key to defeat Al-Shabaab in Somalia. There are force multiplier which erodes those forces. That's hand sentence from 2023. Drop that failure to beat Al-Shabaab wrecks African instability, destabilizes the entire region through its operations. That's Al-Qaeda. It's also from 2023. Empirics disprove applies to every single AFF impact, but more because they read 2017 impact cards at the NDT, and our impacts are from the last year. The internal link is also from 2023. Read a card. It spills into the Middle East and South Asia. Nuclear war, ME13 war, spread instability, nuclear armed Pakistan states, trigger conflict. Any African is more important to security lane between Africa and Middle East. As weak states are ideal for Al Qaeda war in the Congo, creates unspilling underworld of arms trading, illegal commerce, destabilizes states, and the drones solve terror better than the AFF studies proves. 1422, the United States is connected over 40,000 drones strikes to drone operations reduce terrorism. We analyze patterns in 18 countries. Every country that fielded armed drone reduce terrorism. Drones various ethical concerns would appear to have effective counter some tools. Drones are key to disrupt safe havens. Reagan 22 considerable evidence indicates strikes significantly begin disrupted AQC, causing evacuation of relative safe havens. Support could plan and train individuals for attacks in the West. They contributed to lowering rise of attacks. Safe havens uniquely enable WMD terrorism by 123 on one and actors successfully attained raw materials. They need to securitize suitable safe havens of terrorists exercise control operate on digital can therefore be expected to make weapon production more feasible. Transformative effects of safe haven were clearly illustrated in the 2014 seizure of northern Iraq. I'm going to read another impact card. It's spilled over globally. Paris in 18th stability in Africa is crucial to security. The most fragile states were in Africa. Instability created the placement of power vacuums where non-state actors flourish. Fragile regimes see alliance with adversaries such as China, reject fugitive flows or concern crisis present threat terrorists thrive and weak environment because lack of a rule of law. Rough governments refuse to engage. The U.S. had decided whether or not will stabilize or allow breeding ground for terrorism. Food insecurity creates the potential for potential alignment with other major powers destabilizing refugees and the propensity to breed terrorism.
Okay, we stopped. Sorry. Well. Okay. Okay. The order is going to be the warships advantage, the mining advantage, the politics DA. Okay, warship, mining, politics, dissent counterplan, 2NC counterplan, and then the drones. Yeah, the counterplans go dissent, 2NC.
Give the order one more time.
Yeah. Warships, mining, politics, dissent, 2NC, drones. Get water. Okay, is everyone good? Cool.
We do have clear evidence calculating mass health. The carbon cabinet says the appointment of ABs is inevitable and lack of legal status means that China is likely to seize them. That will precipitate miscalculation because China will push into the gray zone. The US is likely to escalate. That will escalate to nuclear conflict. There's how much evidence says that the fact that China has things like nukes on high alert and they're interconnected with things in the South China Sea mean they're going to escalate over a core interest. I'm not going for the terror impact, but yes, there is US China based out there. Evidence is just impact data, accidental war and EWS, but it doesn't answer our gray zone pushing argument about China is not accidental. Empirical proof that there have been skirmishes in the past and China is likely to go in the gray zone and the US could escalate in that scenario. That outweighs every impact in this debate. 21 climate change, pandemics, pro life inequality, terrorism, authoritarian, global housing, peace out by one country, cooperation with China, use Chinese military struggle will create a political environment that the world history needs will make it easily difficult to achieve, but both their impacts, the buying advantage. The first card on this advantage clearly says that the U.S. would need a clear legal status of warships, of autonomous vessels such warships to be able to operate them. Otherwise, other countries will internationally dispute that ability. And our cards on advantage 1 says the Navy is unlikely to deploy these in the status quo. Our advantage 2 card says that the Navy does not have sufficient technology to demine in the status quo. Demining is able to work. I'm not going for the Iran stuff or the shocks. I'm just going to go for the Ukraine stuff. Our Ukraine evidence says that the presence of autonomous warships doing demining would be able to unlock Ukrainian ag exports, and that is the only way to provide for global food security is there uniquely key. The food impact is not directly answered. It causes global instability in places like South Asia and the Middle East that escalates nuclear wars. For the crib evidence, politics. Cross-apply the wing from the 1NC. We explicitly conceded that the plan is unpopular in the 1NC, which was their wing argument on politics that proves that Congress should never vote on the plan because personally it is extremely radical. If it's so bad that it would take Biden's PC, it proves that Congress would never actually vote for it, much less get to the vote threshold needed. It doesn't take out our China impact. The rapier evidence says that energy independence is relevant and independently it can't tackle our scenario on case, the dissent counterpoint. Top level, you should extend the second perm. The 2NC massively mishandled this permutation. It was a functionally intrinsic permutation, but textually legitimate permutation, which disproves the competition of the counterpoint. It had the United States do the plan and then issue a ruling on a separate case about naval vessels that ruled the 5-4 against them, but said the 4 dissented and would do it on federalism purposes. That proves that the counterpoint that the perm just does the plan and then has the court issue another ruling that unlocks the potential of federalism and dissent, which is able to solve their net benefit. They did not say theory in the 2NC, so and that guides one of our strategies, so you don't allow new to in our answers. Now, I'm not going for printing the counterpoint, but the counterpoint definitely does not solve the case. Cross by all their arguments, the counterpoint is not at all certain, and we should get all certainty deficits. The 1AC Swain evidence says that certainty in the context of China is super key because only regulatory certainty within the US is able to deter other countries from seizing our ships. If there's regulatory uncertainty, which is caused by the counterpoint issuing conflicting rulings in the short term, China will seize on that and say, oh, the US does not have its shit together on belligerent rights. We are going to take this window of opportunity to seize their ships and argue they don't have international law on their side to respond to this with an act of war. There's no congressional follow-on because of the because of the politics link and Congress hates the idea of personal equality, tinkering, some person, highly political sensitive issue concerning the legal struggles as of individuals thinking members of the state, such as shown by legal condition, immigrants, the U.S. wrong political destruction part of the church, indicates granting legal protection to be matter of political decision on person are contagious. Even if they win follow on, it does not solve the app. They've said follow on of the court ruling would devolve the authority to the states, but that is not able to solve because the states do not have jurisdiction over the Navy, and their counterpart does not fiat that they are granted jurisdiction. Now, the Supreme Court would never do that. This was in the treaty. We've been consistent. The Navy Chief of Naval Command has sole authority, and that devolution would be nonsensical. We get new explanation because the 2NC read a bunch of cards. It doesn't matter that we read all the follow-on cards because none of those cards assumes that the courts would have to contend with other issues in the case. For them to win follow-on or the court support the F, they would have to win 5 Supreme Court justices say, you know, I think we should completely decimate Article 1 of the Constitution, involve all naval military power of the state. Same for Congress, even if litigants' appeals to federalism grounds are persuasive in the abstract, like their evidence says, they would certainly lose to the plain and simple argument that the state can and should not have authority over the military. Now, there's no net benefit. It's a one shot, and there are massive all causes to federalism, like Trump. The 2EC evidence says that federalism is not able to solve threats. It just causes fights and fragmentation. Their evidence is terrible. It's like one line, and there's no terminal impact to anything they read. Advantage counterclaim. The 2NC counterclaim is not able to solve the entire advantage explanation. Proves that if you just declare something a warship without rights, that isn't able to solve international tensions. The threatening China with nukes just raises tension because our Talmud evidence says they are super insecure about their nukes and would likely first strike the US. The drones DA. There's no terror insurance case because we can see that there was no impact, and there's no insurance case because the app fiat is able to outweigh. Now, there's absolutely no link. I will concede that Congress does the plan, but our no spillover argument was that naval law is distinct from common law. Even if we grant like to belligerency to AI within naval law, it does not flow over to common law, which is the part of the evidence which they haven't contested answered. There's a massive link turn. The Aff grants rights of belligerency, which means that even if there are conflicting rights, they would always be able to act in wartime. If they are right about right sweep, it spills over to drones and allows them to act in military conflicts. Their evidence, none of it is about drones, and it just says it may be unethical or they could refuse order. They concede the AI is not smart enough on the agar evidence, and the status quo disproves perception because people already love drones and want to use them because it doesn't require sacrificing humans. There's no spillover. The Meccano evidence is bolstered by our Navy argument. It says that legal rights do not equal full legal personality, which takes out most of their link evidence because it can be limited and not grant person and not spill over to other areas, which proves it can be done in a vacuum in the context of military law. And there's no internal link because drones were deployed way before AI, and AI is not critical in their operation. Is there a quick card you want me to read? Or China impact clearly outweighs in terms of Africa because US and China get drawn in.
Okay. Nope, you're good. Okay, so the order is going to be the drones DA, then the dissent counterplan, then politics, then warships advantage, then the mining advantage. Yeah, so it's the drones DA. Sorry, I missed the advantage counterplan. So drones DA, the advantage counterplan, the dissent counterplan, the politics DA, advantage 1, advantage 2.
I'm sorry, what's after race?
After the drones DA, the advantage counterplan, then the dissent counterplan, then politics DA, then advantage 1, then advantage 2.
Okay. No cards. All right.
No.
Right before you start, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so sorry, I need like one more.
Yeah, no, of course. It's the drones DA, then the advantage counterplan, then the dissent counterplan. Yep, politics DA, then advantage 1, advantage 2.
Honestly, I'd rather judge in this room than like one of the other like conference rooms that like you can't, there's no sound.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like that, yeah, that was so,
Yeah, in the Dartmouth debate, like
Yeah.
you can hear thing.
yeah, it's just like, what are we doing? Be like stout. One of Emory CR like mid to like mid speakers like I can't hear you. Like I can't hear you over somebody.
I'd literally kill him. I'm not gonna lie. Mid speech, I'd be like. Mhm. Okay. Ian, are you good? Yeah, sounds good. Kansas loses this debate because we have 2 external impacts that the 1 year has simply dropped, which means any risk of a link outweighs since they haven't contested any other level of this disad, and only we have evidence that speaks to the spillover effect that trade-off effect of the plan. 1, only drones solve terrorism. The 2 NC did not extend impact defense to terrorism. We conceded that nuke terror caused extinction, and I said word for word that the 1 year plan to straight turn an absent drones extinction is inevitable. Nuke terror always on sheer scope. A single nuclear terror has event catalyzes a larger nuclear exchange due to the rush of action to leaders see nuclear states that determine extinction. The bar tricks evidence says that there's no going back over the nuclear taboo once it's broken. Absent drones, which means that non-state actors struggling nukes being or impacts are reversible when they have no capacity to access this in a world where the 1 year is just not flowing. 2, African instabilities and impact builders, the ability to solve climate change, overfishing, deforestation, mining, pandemics, and ag, which are existential. It's also sort of a proxy hotspot for Russia, China, and the US, which means that he draws on all major powers, including Iran. That's array evidence. Also, it turns the case. Drones are the only quick and effective method to disrupt adversary planning, whether barter intelligence via monitoring and sort of coordinate and execute attacks on safe havens that make nuclear weapon production and launch feasible for China and Iran, which means that's the only way that actually those impacts scenarios actually cause extinction, which means that only we access a quicker internal link to all of their offense. Now, the link is massive. 1, the fact that the plan is a simple amendment to military policy would be a fine argument against a version of this disad that wasn't also about military policy and how the U.S. military policy talks about technologies, drones, ships, etc., which means that actually them being about the military only makes our disad better. 2, just granting belligerency rights does not spike the link. The 2 year cannot name an entity, thing, person that has been granted 1 duty or 1 right without further corresponding legal rights. It began with a duty for corporations to be taxed and then became citizens united with advanced legal rights for those same corporations. There's no example of an entity receiving rights without corresponding legal rights, and vice versa. If an entity has rights to belligerence and those rights then can be violated, then it also follows that they have legal repercussions, legal representation, legal rewards in the case where the AI is challenged and win the case. That means the AI still gets liability insurance, still gets financial redress in the case of damages, and due process. All those moral and legal rights in the court are necessary to enforcement of the app, and literally how legal rights are decided. Even people in Guantanamo Bay have Supreme Court protected rights, which means that all of these arguments prove the link. The link is a far more spillover argument in the context of drones and their ships argument. 3, it still pushes the idea that AI is morally on par with a human because it presumes the idea that it has the calculus to be punished and that it has the sort of the calculus to sort of have a right. That's the app evidence that elevates things to the level of disturbing status in the legal system. And once there's a difference in the legal system, it's incredibly difficult for any case to differentiate between the 2, and it also provides grounds for different litigants to argue the case. Now, granting any increment of legal personality AI robots does create endless litigation resistance and ultimately ends in the use of drones for military operation. The 1 year just drops 3 unique link arguments. First, AI independence, allowing AI to independently refuse dangerous missions and refuse when they grant these rights of
belligerency means that they can also be applied to drones. It means that they can decide when they want to be belligerent and when they don't want to, too, allowing AI activists to lobby for protections that prevent use of drones instrumentally, because it means that it proves that they can sort of lobby for these rights broadly in the context of military policy. 3, incentivizing commanders to preemptively avoid the legal cost of drone use, which proves the link is perception based, even if we lose the spillover argument. Now, people already love drones is not responsive to it. I just said only we have link evidence about how the signal of the plan would be led to increased litigation that prevents the use of drones instrumentally. Even the commanders that adore drones would not want to handle the immense legal costs that come with it. It cannot be done in a vacuum. Only we have evidence that seek the trade-off AI drones. Not key was not an argument that Tracy incentivizes sandbagging and choose negative strategy. Also, it does not matter because we read evidence specifically about why the president in the context of AI drones would then spill over. Now, granting any increment of legal personality does spill over. Only we have the Habit 20 evidence, the Dramaluga 19 evidence that specifically talks about how systematically these new legal norms in the context of military policy in the U.S. probably get cross-applied. Now, saying that they will agree with all the U.S. stuff because they just didn't want to answer all the cards that Grace read in 1 and R takes out their argument that they are only a unique military policy. We have made an argument that only Congress can establish rights, which means that the interpretation of the plan, sure, it means that the Navy enforces it on its own ships, but it also does not, but it still means that Congress has to pass a law over the legal rights of ships, which causes a broader spillover effect in the context of the law. We've read definitions of law, should, the U.S. legal rights and duties, saying that it sort of causes a broader action that also includes infinite agencies and infinite legal processes, which proves that it does not move or eliminate any of the spillover arguments. Now, go to the advanced counterplan. The counterplan solves threatening China with autonomous warships that can attack people is the equal signal of threatening them with anything else that would stop them from attacking or seizing autonomous naval vessels. They also don't read a solvency deficit to any of the arguments for advantage too. We said that we would also solve the Strait of Hormuz internal link, which is the only thing internal link to Ukraine. We massively increase funding for autonomous naval ships, which solves all of their arguments. The no one see card ties any of their rights arguments to the same fact. Crossix said that every single scenario except China is just about deploying autonomous naval vessels, which proves that the first plank solves, and it also bans all the other stuff, which proves that the link and there's no permutation, and that if anything you could just kick it because we're still going to win on the case. Now, the dissent sub concede the perm test of competition. Congress hates personhood, just proves the plan forces their hand. They have conceded our link on drones. It's not just about Congress literally posting and bail, but the courts getting granted to cause broad societal opinions and military doctrines would change in the conscience of drones. Importantly, the 1 year does not apply this to drones, neither does it apply politics, which means they cannot cross apply in 2 AR because I do not get 3 and R. Now, the politics of how unpopular does not take over the spillover link because it still means that they sort of set the precedent. They're being hesitant to spread now. Now, the warships advantage, though, 1 AR has dropped 2 arguments. 1, U.S. naval power is resilient and strong, which means there's no impact to either advantage, since it means China and Iran are strongly deterred now and will not escalate a war in the South China Sea, let alone close the Strait of Hormuz, which is their internal link to Ukraine. The Eastern Book evidence from the 2NC says that arms race have stopped. Naval fighting has stopped because they are so scared shitless of naval competition with the United States groups. That's why the U.S. have 10 versus all the other nations combined being 0. U.S. Navy size, power, competence has banished creating for more than half a century. China and Russia possess no super carriers, have no under construction and naval dominion that can ever change the United States, which sort of makes them afraid of doing anything in this conflict. There is no interlink to the China scenario or any interlink to gray zone conflict. Wars are started by choice. States don't stumble into a major conflict. Then neither desires empiric. No major war was accidental. Countries are tactical. U.S. trying to posture share concerns over North Korea. U.S. and Chinese militaries are not postured to fight major wars, and they'll avoid it because they have things like Chinese ship crashes, aircraft hacking, etc. Now, the second advantage, it does not matter. They have not read a card that says that rights for vessels are key for mining. Their Cordo evidence says that they are being deployed now. We've read a counterplan that increases them. That all their evidence is about Singapore, Japan, South Korea. That's a major cause where it solves the case. There's no Ukraine food scenario. It's not mines that are stopping Ukraine exports or controlling evidence of a correspondent. We have evidence that there's no uniqueness. The digital shift solves because resource prices like food don't even escalate. Neither does oil. If they're right, if there is no deployment now, then it would take decades for the U.S. to even engage in it. And there's no reason why food abundance and agriculture in the status quo would not solve. That's Froome, Kenny, and Wong.
Ian, I was muted, so I'll repeat the order. Advantage 1, warships, mines, counterplan, DA. Okay. Are we good? Cataclysmic miscalculation with China is inevitable. The atmosphere with tactical attempt to guarantee or promise extinction. Attempt to stop a nuclear war between the United States and China that would guarantee extinction due to the size of their arsenals and because of nuclear war irreversible, impacting life's value and value is inconsensible and irreversible. Now, the entirety of the 2 hour case misunderstands our scenario. Our McKenzie evidence says that the existing legal ambiguity now, as per the status of warships, is what causes China to poke and prod, even if they are correct that China has a far lesser military than the United States is. That doesn't matter because our Robinson evidence says that without absent legal clarity with warships, China is incentivized to poke and prod and test the United States legal boundaries because they think that they have an attempt to confront the United States without incurring the risk or the wrath of war. For example, if we have Navy gliders or other form of auxiliaries and ships in China's territorial waters, the absence of warship status means that China thinks that they can seize them and inspect them for their seaworthiness without actually expecting any legal repercussions or ramifications from the United States, because the United States is not legally entitled to respond in a warlike manner after the fact. All of their arguments about China having a domestically inferior navy simply supercharges the argument that they are super scared and want to make sure that the United States Navy is not incurring on anything that is not enjoying or incurring on anything that or trying to encircle China in the first place. The China's military or naval hegemony is zero relevance for whether or not they would be incentivized to exploit the regulatory uncertainty against our own vessels in their territorial province, which our Robinson evidence says that they are very likely to do now. Even if China is tactical, there is no cap on escalation. Our third card on the first advantage of the 1AC says that both China and the United States are overconfident in our abilities to manage escalation, and the fact that we have nuclear, conventional, entanglement, autonomous vessels means that even a small feature of an autonomous vessel with wartime capability, absent that legal status, could go nuclear because the United States thinks that China may be predictably trying to attack or take out a nuclear first strike or second strike capability, which guarantees nuclear escalation because the United States would be incentivized to preemptively launch against China in the first place. Go to the Iran stuff doesn't matter. Mine's advantage, conceal the Iran defense not going forward. This time stuff. Advantage counterplan. Look, against a certainty key and perception-based affirmative, the counterplan is the exact wrong way to go about trying to resolve the legal ambiguity towards China, because the counterplan has 2 planks. First, it bans the existence of belligerent rights, which in turn it bans the existence of warship status for ships. But secondly, it declares that it treats ships with belligerent rights, and then allows the United States to attack other states after the fact, which is entirely nonsensical. Beneath the Hague Convention, beneath international law, only ships with belligerent rights are entitled warship status and have the belligerent capacity to attack other nations. What the counterplan does is tell China, we do not give our autonomous vessels the legal standing to attack you in a time of war, but if you attack this ship, then it will incur the full weight of the United States military. That is a completely ambiguous and nonsensical signal that we've told China that magnifies all the existing ambiguity in the status quo. It sends conflicting signals about what or what not our autonomous vessels are. It sends conflicting signals about what we'll do in response to those things, because the second and the third and fourth planks of the counterplan are entirely opposite things. The counterplan cannot claim to send the exact signal, because if we say that no ships can have belligerent rights, then it means that none of our autonomous vessels can have warship status either. All of our McKenzie evidence in the 1AC and the 2AC competition cards support the idea that belligerent rights and warship status are inextricable. So the counterplan bans something and then promises to punish China for encroaching on that ban, which makes absolutely zero sense. Doesn't solve anything after the rights brigade. Okay. Case outweighs the threat to DADA access to the impact, but they will not win immediately as long as the internal links to these impact as the case that you refer to impact probability, because if you it's to a teaching in U.S. China war tournament or failure evidence that the U.S. China conflict makes global cooperation on every existential risk possible. It is impossible to stop terrorism and African instability in one country. Only global cooperation can counter these threats globally and through multiple channels. There is no internal link to the DADA fatal flaw that even if every wins that the assholes over rights for AI, they have no evidence that full rights would undermine the deployment of drones in the first place. Policymakers love drones. The U.S. has been using them for decades, and the app means that drones would have good rights, which vests them with the right to attack other countries because we give the military the proclivity to use AI in times of conflict. That means that the app directly sees that drones would have the right to attack any other country, which the military could use for drone ability. Their evidence claims that preventing drone use is terrible. Their only explanation is that AI would say no, but they dropped the evidence that AI is not smart enough to make moral decisions. And even if that's true, for AI to reach a capacity where AI can actually say no to being deployed in war would take decades, if not centuries, because AI doesn't have emotions right now and cannot feel the emotive impacts of going into war. Secondly, the activists that would sue on behalf of AI rights, but one, belligerent rights for AI would probably lead to the those suits, and B, Emory has not explained what grounds activists would sue on that would actually cause the military to stop AI deployment. If the military is really concerned about AI not wanting itself to go to war, then why doesn't the military just use alternatives? The one made the argument that the United States has non-AI drones and other forms of military uses that we can use to maintain stability in Africa. Even if they win drones key, we can simply use the drones that we've been using for the past 30 years. Since the 80s, they have no evidence that these updated, emotive, embodied robots with emotions and feelings are key to this, to U.S. primacy in Africa. And the military can simply adopt to use other measures in non-artificially intelligent drones, or just cap the level of AI deployment in the military to narrow AI rather than general AI that can refuse to be deployed. Okay.
Ian, we sent the NEG doc.
We should
Ian, I sent that.
Hey, Ian. We are in. I'll announce in just a moment. Can everyone like hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, is this like the best way to do this in terms of like me? Yeah, okay. Haven't done a hybrid debate in a minute. All right. Excellent debate, everybody. This was incredibly wonderful and close. The decision is a 2-1 for the affirmative. I sat. I vote negative because I think that they won the counterplan and the disad. First, I end up concluding that the advantage counterplan significantly mitigates or resolves the US-China miscalc scenario by massively increasing funding, deploying AVs, and declaring that any seizure attack on these vessels would constitute an act of war. The TLDR for the advantage counterplan is that the negative has won. They like sufficiently scare the crap out of like China, essentially, to the point where they wouldn't dare to like poke or prod our precious ships per the 2NR's explanation. While this magical like 2NC pivot is like lacking in evidence, obviously, I think Emory has like very persuasive spin game here in explaining China's incentives, their threat perception, as well as referencing multiple pieces of 1AC evidence to demonstrate that belligerent rights are really not the deciding factor for China. And I think I did like the 2AR's recharacterization of the counterplan and like the storytelling of it, especially, and how it would like all play out. These are very smart and intuitive arguments, but the problem for me here is twofold. First is newness. I cannot trace a lot of this back to the 1AR. And so I would feel very uncomfortable like telling the negative, like, yeah, you should have expected like all of this, and, you know, you should have explained, like, you know, yeah, preempting all of that. Like, I would not feel comfortable doing that. And then B's point is that our evidence isn't like quite there. I do think that Kansas's evidence about just like belligerent rights generally and like how it, you know, connects or equates to warships is like good and fine, but we really don't have like one solid card that really connects the issues, which is like a press that Emory was making since like cross-ex of the 1AC, you know, like if we had just like, for example, this like Carlin card is like, okay. I wish that we had, again, a card that was just, if this card was more so about like belligerent rights or something and explaining why that is the deciding factor, like that could potentially get me there, at least on this argument, but I don't think it was quite there. For the disad, I end up concluding that's pretty big, maybe not at 100% risk, but it's certainly up there. I'll retweet what I said above about like 1AR, 2AR, like disconnect on the counterplan. I think that issue is also like a little bit like present here. And this disad was also would be very difficult for you to resolve in favor of the affirmative, primarily because we just like don't have cards. And while the NEG's evidence is not like hyper specific to warships, your judges are over here looking at a card doc where the NEG has read like a zillion link cards and the app doc is like empty in this department, like entirely. And so I thought the 2NR did like an excellent job, like kind of like persuasively like ranting at this one point, like all the like basically explaining why like legal rights and stuff means that they also have to be like entitled or liable for like X, Y, and Z, you know, like that part like of the 2NR. And there wasn't like really pushback on this, like whatsoever. You just kind of like let the 2NR just explain like what the app does. Like, yeah, you just kind of let them recharacterize and like get away with that. So absent a response to that link argument, I think the disad is like pretty huge in Slayer. Obviously, you know, we're not going for like impact D or anything like that. And also the other like AF turns, the disad stuff doesn't like really matter as much for me when I conclude the advantage counterplan sufficiently mitigates most of that as well. Oh, the other thing that I'll mention too, like case arguments that also implicated this, because I think some of this kind of got meshed together like on the counterplan as well, is that I think the NEG also wins these arguments about like US naval like domination or US naval dominance being like resilient, even though like that card could be like a little bit better. And I also think this like low 22 card that they read is like exceptionally good about like miscalculation. And I think, yeah, that evidence was like very clearly extended. And again, this kind of connects back to what I said earlier about like all the incentive stuff, like threat perceptions, et cetera. I think they're kind of doing a little bit better like spin game. And I think they did most of that earlier in the debate. I can end there for now, let other judges go and return. Yeah.
You want to go ahead, Maggie, or I can go next? Either way is good with me.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Awesome. My TLDR is that I think there is a marginal risk of case. It's not huge. I kind of agree that the counterplan mitigates it plus the defense, but I just don't think there's an internal link to the DA. I think that the counterplan there's a risk that the counterplan doesn't address some of the nuances that the AF is making about the relationship between ambiguity and sort of testing, and that the counterplan recreates that. And then without that, even though there is some risk that shoring up or naval deterrence being strong may scare them somewhat, that does not necessarily stop them from testing us. And I think that mainly the problem for me was that I think that the AF's logical presses on the question about whether the affirmative results in the banning of all drones in a way that compromises drone policy is a problem for me. And I think that even the strongest application of the three, definitely one, link arguments, make me confident that the AF, don't make me confident that the AF prevents the deployment of drones in any significant way. I think that there's some risk. I'll start with the China stuff versus the defense. I think there's some risk that it draws in and spills over to African conflict, though that's vague, but there's definitely a reasonable risk of the United States miscalc is a fast nuclear war. The not posture for major war thing is kind of the explanation I have from the low evidence, but it seems like the AFF is strong enough here that there's a risk of escalation of a major war, even if that's not the game plan per se. The warrants in low honestly didn't make it out that much in 2NR, like the extension of the evidence by name beyond the not posture for major war thing, I just don't have down. Naval power resilient is not super responsive to the F scenario, at least as they're explaining it in the 2AR, which seems consistent with the 1AR explanation of ambiguity on the case. And then maybe it makes them hesitant to challenge us, but it doesn't disprove the motive for gray zone challenges that have a chance of escalating. Low risk, but present. Advantage counterplan, I think that AF is talking sense about the application of their case stuff from the 1AR and 2AC on the case about ambiguity, gray zone stuff. The counterplan doubles down on a gray zone posture that China exploits. And there's not really a neg pivot that attends to this other than just kind of posturing about how scared they'd get, which I think is at least somewhat consistent with some of the F evidence. Not really sure. The important stuff is the DA internal link. I think the F internal link press makes a lot of sense, to be honest. I think it negates the interdependence link. And that they would say no, there's less of a perfect job negating the perception or activist spillover link, but I still think I can't look that AF in the eyes and explain how they stop the use of drones for any of the impacts that the NEG has outlined. I think that the logical press here needs more 2NR and 1NR attention, because both times you get to the internal link debate and you're just like, that was above versus applying.
I have a question just before you move on to like the other stuff specific about that. So like in your model of debate, the affirmative has not introduced evidence on any of these questions. They haven't even inserted them in their card doc for you to read. It is just your opinion, and you have just agreed with like the analytical press to the disad and zeroed a disad because someone has an opinion about the 1NC. Like what piece of evidence are you citing for anything you have said in this RFD?
I just don't think that you've read a piece of evidence that the AF prevents the deployment of military drones.
The McCalsey evidence, the Naval's evidence, and like.
No, also, I don't think those say that.
You don't think the affirmative has to produce any evidence that there's no spillover between rights, that it doesn't lead to spillover to drones?
I actually think you're winning that there is a spillover to autonomous drones, but I think that they're winning that doesn't prevent the deployment of.
Where was that in the 2AC?
I understand that as a logical extrapolation of the no internal link argument.
Cool. So logical extrapolation. Can I and the 2NR just make completely new arguments to the case because they dawned upon me as a logical extrapolation? Like,
I mean, if it was,
how does that make any sense in debate? Like at all?
I think that would have been a very logical, like if you had made a logical press, I mean, I guess like it depends on whether it's how connected it is to a piece of like 1NC argumentation, for example, or block argumentation, for example. But like, yeah, I think I can reciprocally apply that standard.
How does the negative decide its block strategy? Right. Off of the 2AC. So then the 1AR can just say whatever the fuck it wants. And we're supposed to.
Well, my concern here is that they make an internal link press in the 2NC, and both times it's made, like the internal link is brought up in the 2AC, the 1NR gets to it and just says that was above.
The 2AC did not say that like this autonomous drones thing at all.
I find it to be related.
I agree with you. It is logical. I agree that it's a smart argument from Kansas. I'm not disagreeing with that. But just like, what is this like model of debate for you for the negative? What does the negative look like in a world where the 1AR can just say whatever it wants on the disad because you think that it's the truth? And like, how do people prepare for tournaments if whatever you think is the truth of a disad does not have to be contested with evidence?
So I think it's valuable to contest it with and without evidence, but the point is more that I find the explanation of the internal link to have been established by both the 1AR and the 2AC, and there wasn't, like, it's not like it was the thing where like you had the logical answer and then pressed back with like they don't get it, but like you just said no and then didn't answer it, which makes me think that like
no one didn't answer it. We have 6 cards in the 1NR.
Yeah, like, but those cards don't actually answer the internal link press. They answer that there's no spillover to
Okay,
Like,
that's fine. Let's
so I can go through all the link cards and why I think I was actually going to do
Let's
that.
Let's conclude. They didn't do that. So if you did do that, then that's a separate issue.
But I did that to
on
help
You're just
you,
like
to
not
be clear.
judging on the, you're not
Look.
judging off of the flow, but if you
Well,
were helping us,
look.
like, I think the tuner is also making analytical arguments, but I want to move on to
Yeah,
like.
and I evaluated all of them,
You've
to be clear.
zeroed a disad off of like analytical presses. But
I don't
you
think it's zero. I don't think
Okay,
it's, I just
cool.
think it's exceptionally
Okay, that's
low.
fine. But then on the case, you have sort of accepted the premise that if we do not have belligerent vessels, China will trigger a war in the South China Sea.
I think
you
that
can
the
accept
clear
that
legal,
logical premise, but you can't accept the spillover disad that's been read for the entire topic.
I can yeah, basically, I think that that's relatively consistent with both their explanation and with the evidence they presented, as I understand it. Whereas I can't pick that out for the evidence that you've read, despite trying. Honestly, I read through all your cards. I tried my best to do that because I thought that was the reasonable standard.
Yeah, I guess we're just inserting our opinions in debate. That's fine. I'll listen to Maggie because this did not make sense.
Okay. Do you want to? So I voted F. I think that the world of the NEG is a world in which the US exercises some extreme brash aggression that lacks a legal authority necessary to inhibit international fallout. The AFF, by way of legal mechanisms agreed upon by the international community, endorses a world in which the US is able to act with the same brashness that the negative does, but they have the legal backing to support this. It functions as a means of communication with the rest of the international community that avoids international fallout that would come with the counterplan. While the NEG proposes a world of extreme American aggression bolstered by confusing signals of functionally offering similar benefits as the plan, but also sending the middle finger to much of the international community by banning belligerency standard and declaring to China that they will first strike them if a ship is attacked. The AFF proposes a world in which the US makes use of currently existing legal statutes to bolster US navigability and to signal to other countries clear moments of difference. I don't think that the world of the disad is much better for the negative, which I do thoroughly consider. You are correct that the AFF grants rights, and perhaps they're permitted for drones as well, ignoring the timeframe concerns that I have regarding the grand narrative of the disad, which I think is expressed. There's significant problems for the negative because the AFF grants the right to belligerency, which, as I understand from the performance of cross-examination, the right to be a bit of an international asshole. So I am confused with the story that you want to go for. I am sympathetic to the cards that you're talking about. I am appreciative of those spillover cards that you're reading, but I cognitively cannot make sense of a world where quickly spillover for these drones happen in this region that is a hotspot right now, which needs to be resolved, which they have read evidence that we need international cooperation to resolve terrorism. That's sort of floating in the background, but I am confused as to what the trajectory of a rights advocacy is for drones that undermines the operations that you're talking about. And so that's really where I have this problem. I'm left wondering, in what scenario will the negative impact happen? How does the story go down? The AFF has posited that Congress loves drones and they grant the right to be assholes. And so I'm like, in what world, like, what is the sympathetic argument that I need answers to this like moment, because I cognitively can't square the two. I like don't know why the rights you're talking about that would undermine these operations would be the point of the disad. So, you know, at what point does this, I'm rambling at this point, but at what point does this discussion turn into a social justice effort for Jones's thinking and feeling automatons? Additionally, I think that they are making arguments about the military just restricting certain uses that I think are not answered. I think that that's my decision. I think that I'm doing a bit of work in that discussion, and I think that was better than the 2AR, but I don't think it's unjustified. I don't think it's unjustified based on what the negative is going for, the point at which the debate is happening. The pieces are in play. I have some comments on how this 2AR could be executed better. I have a lot of thoughts about that, but I think that it's sufficient for a world where they've got some actually pretty strong arguments, as I understand them in the debate. And so that's where I come down.
What is China?
So the problem is what the problem is the mechanism, right? So like the AF has identified an international agreed upon standard for establishing a deterrent signal, right? And they're like, this thing of belligerency under like the Hague or whatever is a way to signal, don't mess with this ship, right? And so it both signals deterrence while endorsing the international community standards that have already been set, which is how they get access to their China card.
Because I don't think this is addressable. What do you think of establishing belligerent right means?
Establishing a belligerent, as I understand it from Crossex, it's like a right to attack under certain conditions of war, and establishing them as belligerent warships means that it sends a deterrent signal that these are warships for attack. Mm-hmm.
Will also initiate a war if you attack or seize an autonomous vessel. Like, why is that not just the same minus the rights that
I know, but the argument that they have about why this is good is because it's signaling deterrence via international means. Your hard power of like pure aggression, we will like bomb you. They're like,
the only card that then comes to talk about China is like describing ambiguous like vessels in the South China.
I kind of disagree with your characterization. I think the McKinsey evidence. Slow down.
I mean, it is my last NDT. I didn't think I get the right to do this. Like,
you absolutely got the right to do this, but this is my last NDT. I got the right to get my RFD right. Okay, so UNCLOS, right? McKinsey does talk about this when it talks about UNCLOS and belligerent rights. The Swain evidence does talk about this when it says the International Framework on Maritime Navigation. Definition.
like these cards don't say China. They say that states care that there's some flexible interpretation. Why does that mean China causes a war?
What?
Like, how does this lead to a catastrophic miscalculation in China? Like you've just cited lines that are like the international legal system cares about interpretations of norms, which is hilarious in the context of China. But like, where does any of this tie to China? Like, I just do not understand this internal link. And my big issue is like, if you're like, look, I just think Kansas explained this great, I'm fine. I think they're great debaters. Then in what world can we zero a disad but not zero an advantage when they don't have an internal link card?
I don't think that they don't have an internal link card. That's where we disagree.
So you don't think the card has to say that it causes a conflict? You think they can be steps?
Help me understand this, right? Okay, so the counter plan, like, we're not going to use this. It's like ban this international standard that is internationally agreed upon, right? And then it's like, also, China, if you mess with us, we will punch you, right? Like, that's functionally what the counterplan does. So why in the world would China want to like? No, that's not what the plan does, right? Yeah, that's a thing that we have internationally agreed on among other parties.
That attacking and seizing each other's vessels is an act of war. Like, I just don't understand the difference between these two things. But like,
Okay.
we're gonna go anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
We disagree, but that's what it is. What it is.
Good job.
Thank you all.
Good job, y'all.